Shinji and Warhammer40k. Chapter 42. The Coming Storm. Part 4.
Ritsuko Akagi's Ahoge swayed merrily in the wind. She stood on top of her red tower, and before her was an endless expanse of scorched wasteland. The wind was cold and strong, and her white lab coat flapped like the wings of a bird. She faced away from the wind's direction and shivered. Far above was an indifferent pale light without warmth. The tower tapered off at the top to a circle only big enough for her to lie down. The crenellated crown walls were low and offered no protection, but she'd grown used to the vertigo. What was it about high places that seemed to tempt humans to throw themselves off into the emptiness? At the centre of the space was a simple wooden hatch with a large round brass ring. All she had to do to escape the cold was lift it and enter the tower. It was cold outside, but also bright. She could see everything. There was nothing worth seeing. This is a dream, she decided. This is obviously a metaphor for something. I can just wait until I wake up. Do I even want to wake up? There was music, faint and tinkling at the very edge of her hearing. Putting her hands over her ears didn't help. "Shut up!" she shouted over her shoulder to the expanse, then gagging from the rush of high winds going down her throat. Is there no escape from all the irritating illogic? The music swelled louder for a few seconds. "It's your leitmotif," she heard close by. "It's not going to stop until you calm down." She turned around. She sighed and wished for a cigarette. As expected, her pockets were empty. "It's going to be one of those dreams, isn't it? I was warned about this." She scowled. Her eyeglasses flashed. "You're not my mother. I am the Naoko Akagi in Ritsuko Akagi's mind." She palmed her face. "Oh, go jump off another tower." The memory of white gloves around her neck flashed through her mind. Her fingernails dug into her skin. "I don't need this. Leave me alone." A desperate snarl showed on her face. "Why piano? I don't even like piano." Ava Fantasy Battle was no masterpiece, since Miyazaki had died in Impact, but it still had a lot to answer for. There was a deep bass sound, and trumpets and drums. A shadow stretched out across the tower's stone cap and swallowed her own. She turned around to behold Maya Ibuki in Ritsuko Akagi's mind. The young woman was dressed in a full-body black leather suit and cape. "And why is your leitmotif the theme from Batman?" Maya stepped down from the crenellation, with the sun at her back and her entire form still in shadow. "I was kind of hoping you wouldn't notice." Even her voice had that throaty growl. "You're taking this surprisingly real, senpai." I don't even know what the hell this implies about my psyche, but you know what? I don't care. Akagi knew she was dying. This is pointless reflection at the end of my world. What's done is done. The best thing I can do is leave forever. "So you're just giving up?" Naoko put in. "Will you walk my path to its conclusion?" "Screw that too. I'm staying right here." At least it wasn't an annoying flashback. Maya stepped forward, still clad in shadow. "You're still needed, senpai. Even in this scenario where all of humanity is under threat, things cannot progress until you too make a choice." "I've been desperate. I've been jealous. I've been bitter. I've been betrayed. I hoped and I tried, but it's never enough. I'm pathetic, foolish, sinful woman, Maya, and I'm tired." She put a hand over her face and grimaced. "You have some idealized notion in your head, and that's not me! You can't fix me, Maya. You're lucky. You walked my path and somehow got it right. Congratulations. Now get the hell out." "No! You're better than this!" "Don't touch me!" Slap! The meaty noise began to spread out from the tower. Ritsuko regretted her brief loss of set control. She regretted it more when she saw a black-gloved fist headed for her face. "Oh, I'm sorry. Maya began bowing repeatedly. "It was a reflex." Ritsuko groaned from the ground. "A Hoge beam!" A brilliant shaft of yellow light burst out from her standing tendril of blonde hair. Maya gave out a "eek" of surprise as the beam lightly knocked her on her ass. No, wait, that didn't actually happen. Ritsuko groaned and palmed her face with both hands. "This is no mere Dream, Senpai. This is not the final hallucination. Maya looked up, and the light ate away at the shadows. Away from the obscuring gloom, she looked friendly and unassuming as ever, even with her matte black skin suit. This is a triumph! The young woman pumped her fist into the air. Ritsuko gaped. Maya put her thumb up and grinned. I'm making a note here. Huge success! Naoko groaned. What did you do? Science was done! Maya whirled around, reaching into the folds of her cape and bringing out a double-barrel shotgun. And we get a cool gun, for the benefit of those still alive. Apparently you haven't realized yet that you can already make conceptual attacks. Ritsuko turned away. Why is she so... She waved her hands about, looking for the proper word. Spastic? Naoko offered. Exuberant. Even if she understood personality traits were amplified in the imagination, Maya was acting like some sort of caricature. Naoko smiled and shook her head. So similar and yet so different. In Ibuki, Ritsuko Akagi sees everything that she's not. Youth, innocence, vitality, and yet still too similar that there's no deep emotional connection. The pieces do not fit. Oh, you were expecting Misato Katsuragi, perchance? What are you talking about? Naoko bared her teeth. Ritsuko Akagi no longer feels worthy of Katsuragi riding to her rescue, and yet of all people, she was the only one Akagi really needed. Misato wasn't stupid. Ritsuko knew this as well. There was so much her old friend didn't understand, and it didn't matter one bit, but only so few that she wouldn't forgive. Ritsuko grimaced. Her relationship with Gendo Akari was complicated, but with Misato much simpler, but more bitter in what was left unsaid. In what she'd just let happen, just watching, while the chance for something better with someone that she could trust. She stepped aside and let Kaji give her friend what she needed, but the best thing for all of them brought only pain through the years. A quake shook the red tower, and from deep below a dull roar echoed. The overcast sky dimmed for a moment. A puzzle without a solution is nothing. A lock without a key is worthless, Naoko continued. Ibuki is far too impulsive, I'm too analytical, so only Ritsuko Akagi as she sees herself can judge if she's still worthy of survival. Listen, I already said I don't give a broken, bitter woman, Naoko broke in, stepping closer to loom over her child. But did you really think that was all there is to her? Did you really believe that you are Ritsuko Akagi? This red tower was not meant to imprison her. What? If Ritsuko-senpai really wanted to die, then you wouldn't be here, Maya added, grinning. On the outside, at the level where the conscious and subconscious meet, we knew this was coming. People still need her. Still flabbergasted, Ritsuko offered no resistance as a shotgun was shoved into her hands. She is loved. She has value. Still she does not believe. Even Ritsuko Akagi must eventually confront her own demons, continued Naoko. This is no dream. This is her doom. The hatch cover exploded open. Nerve's benefits package remained ginormous, enough to tempt many not just to commute, but to migrate. Wealth was a powerful incentive, but it wasn't enough. The work conditions were all too inevitably lethal. What sort of person would take that task when all reason dictated money was worthless when dead? With the influx of new immigrants and other Nerve employees from the other sites, Germany and China, for example, being rejected by their own nations for bringing devastation down from the skies, Nerve staff were split into two, the old guard and new soldiers. Alternatively, those who stayed around out of a sense of obligation, and those who had some personal agenda. Family like those of Suzuhara and Hiraki had their adults firmly involved with Nerve, and emotionally invested to such an extent that the thought of leaving was all but cowardice. Families like that of the Kitanos or the Africopolises sought opportunities and a sense that their innate weirdness was being drawn into that metropolis. Most of Nerve's employees probably didn't consider themselves heroes, but there were some individuals who so cheerfully put aside their former lives to go and become heroes, or at least work alongside those they considered as such. Others had something to prove, an axe to grind, or just were motivated by sheer, pure hate and revenge for how they had suffered. The ginormous awards did help, though. Nerve's employee roster rapidly depopulated after Shinji's return. Many of those who signed up in the comfortable 3 months he was gone just commuted from Odawara or Gotemba, and once the conflict returned to full swing, just picked up their benefits package and skedaddled forthwith. The engineer crawling through one of the many secondary maintenance tunnels wished he'd been wise enough, or paradoxically brave enough, to do the same. With the main corridors flooded, and even the elevators locked down or filled with goop, the technicians and support staff had to go through a maze of alternative paths through the geofront. Engineer Shiroku pushed open an access hatch and poked his head out into the geofront surface. It was particularly windy. Evangelions and angels, by virtue of being larger than most buildings, pushed walls of air out of the way with each step. When fighting, swift motions made miniature cyclones, unseen but still a brief spillover of gale-force winds. A shadow passed over the engineer. Behind him was thunder, and a metal rim under his fingertips vibrated. A flying stick hit him in the face. Slowly, carefully, he went back down and closed the hatch. He took a deep breath and then spoke into the radio. "What was that just now?" The geofront was 6 kilometers across. "Did you have to bring us out to exactly where the Avas were fighting?" Back at the command center, Kaide Agano winced from the shout.
"We can't really predict where the combat will happen. The two jump around too much."
While technically the Trident's Dominatus was something different, it was Ava-shaped, and he could be forgiven for the imprecise wording.
"No choice. You'll just have to run through to the next access point. I guess you'll just have to take your chances."
"It's not like the Avas are going to be deliberately aiming at us anyway," added the other nerve tech officer there. Technician First Class Tamiya did not have good grades upon graduating. It was a good thing Nerve prided enthusiasm in a strong wrench hand these days. His eyes blazed with excitement. "The odds are with us." "Damn it, fine." The older employee took another deep breath to calm himself. "On 3. 1, 3! With an incoherent scream, they ran out of the tunnel, as hapless infantrymen forced to charge a trench line. Nearby, a tall concrete tower clicked and whirred and turned to track the 2 tiny figures. "There's a..." Hurriedly, the leader grabbed at his radio. "There's a bolter turret active." "There's a bolter turret active! Control, do something!"
"You're too small for it to reliably track you. Don't stop moving!"
Kaide hurriedly switched between the many different camera views on her command station. She heard the rip of heavy bolt rounds in her headset, while the blaze of hot gases obscured the closest camera, which incidentally was that bolter turret's own gas camera. She heard screaming, which cut off suddenly. "Shiroku!" There were other reports and requests coming in, but Kaide heard none of them. She focused on the smoke-filled panel view, numb about having deliberately ordered men to their deaths. A strong gust of wind from a passing heavy particle beam blew away the smoke. The screen showed Shiroku on the ground in a fetal position, clutching at his head and going, "Oh God, oh 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 God." Tamiya spat out a mouthful of grass and got back up to his feet. He went over to grab the fallen radio. "Oh, wow. The shots went right over our heads. The turret just couldn't depress far enough." He looked over to the next access hatch, which was even closer to the turret, and also safer. The motion tracker might still try to hit them, though. What a deliciously terrifying experience. "Control, did you know that would happen?" Either way, it would be a lie. Kaide's chest felt too tight.
Just get going."
She looked up at the command tower and wondered just how those up there could deal with this sort of thing. She winced with a surge of pity for her friend stuck up there. Of course everyone who worked for Nerve knew the risks, but she'd never really imagined she'd have to choose who lived or died. How can any commander not be a murderer? She started off as a software engineer, for God's sake. Why'd she have to deal with this sort of thing? Makoto Hyuga's face flashed in her mind, and his gentle expression hid something terrifying. Never in any immediate danger, but the sense of responsibility was crushing all the same. She could only watch. Her meagre power to direct teams all over the geofront only made her feel even more of a puppet adrift in a dark sea. She kept her attention away from the main screens, absorbing herself in her own assigned tasks. It was the only way she could keep from being reduced into a babbling ball of sheer terror. "No, don't go into clear passages large enough to admit trucks," said the operator next to her. "I know it looks safe, but it's only because Bakelite flows down, so the demolition corps just laid the hell out of the walls with claymore mines." Another in the secondary command post ordered, "You can plug in the mining laser now. We redirected the power flow from the elevators." Kaide heard, This is Donnelly. We reached the 4th block, ma'am. Do we try to force the door open?
No, that door's designed to fuse its lock if tampered with. The code is 6 Beta 9 Charlie Horse 65,
she answered, forcing her voice to an even tone. She couldn't give even the slightest hint of panic. Many depended on her for sane and purposeful instruction, and sounding as if she knew what she was doing shored up their own confidence.
Once through, open the panel to the left. It leads up to the Block 6 mess hall.
I need a medic here! Security team, Brown 4, please respond. Brown 4? The command centre shook as one of the 2 giants fighting outside struck another blow sufficient to rearrange the terrain. They gave no mind to anything smaller than themselves. Oh, that was just sick, but not helpful, an awed technician said over the comms. Don't stand around to admire the show, you idiots! The voices all around her began to blur. Like many forced into high-stress, attention-demanding situations, the young woman didn't even realise she was shutting down her emotions, all for the sake of getting through the next personnel request or orders from those higher up the command tower. She had no idea what the hell she was doing, too busy to think about the overall shape of her shuffling around. Like the teams risking their necks going through active barriers, she could only trust that those in command had a plan. Misato chewed at her right thumb as she nervously watched the biomechanical beasts battle it out on the main screen. Around her rang the sounds of battle and situation reports from all the teams trying to recover functionality without triggering all the myriad anti-angel traps. Up on the main screen, 2 living gods battled, unable to get a clear advantage. Trident's Dominatus was the perfection of the self, and could shape its body into any weapon. It hammered away at the purple Evangelion with long whip-like arms ending in spiked maces. The attack was slow enough that it didn't trigger the odd precognitive flash whenever the 2 faced each other. It was fast enough that, lacking the new type of perception, Shinji had to rely on his own reactions. The Eva would have just bulled through, unconcerned with any pain to get at the enemy. Trying to cut the limbs would just tangle it around him. The solution was just as simple as straightforward. An epic flail hammered away against an Ava-scale buckler. Similarly, the Dominatus had a hard, smooth carapace to deflect bolter shells and saw blades. Misato paused. She'd missed something there, a whisper too indistinct. Ritsuko would have said something cutting right there. She looked over to the empty command chair. Already she longed for even the most sarcastic jab of her old friend's presence. There was a flash of pain as the nail cracked, tearing loose a strip of flesh. Frowning, Misato turned back to the issue at hand. Team Charlie Green's reached block section 8C. They're requesting permission to enter and switch over the turrets into manual mode, Makoto reported. Denied! Just as with many other such requests. They will only distract the squabbling titans for a few seconds and die in Nagisa's dismissive counter. Misato licked her lips. Unfortunately, even the battle above didn't matter. For all of Nerve's absurd preparations, it remained that they had no plan for victory. Why had they taken for granted that there was a limited number of angels that would be attacking? Even an army could run out of bodies, but looking at what was happening outside, the world did have a legitimate reason to fear Nerve. It was just that the Cradle had taken those fears and applied them before Nerve could even get the idea. They fought, letting the angels exhaust their powers upon a wall of sheer human stubbornness. Even Shinji Akagi out there was fighting to delay, hoping that somehow things would work out in the end. She couldn't say it. Their communications were obviously compromised. I'm tired, Shinji thought, as he triggered the explosive disconnect of the Titan modules. Thick armour served no useful purpose, and the power cells were dry. They'd take too long to charge. He lived and died in the next few seconds. He had no attention to spare for anything other than survival. The Eva backflipped several times and landed upon a pressure plate. Electricity flowed into the plate to the armoured soles of Unit 1's feet, which was then manipulated with the interaction of local fields into its internal battery. BAM! The Evangelion was knocked off its feet. It grabbed just an extra few minutes for that, compared to a full hour with a battery pack or a super-fast conversion charge using a Tesla tower. The Trident destroyed the disguised recharge point and leapt again at its nemesis. At least Kaworu and Nagisa had learned to stop using particle beams and biolasers against Shinji. For the first, Eternus just laid the field, stripped the electrons and charged off the attack. For the latter, the only thing the younger Kari loved as much as throwing around lightning was a homing laser. Only physical attacks would work. The living metal of the Dominatus could become any weapon. Just a few minutes ago, the Eternus had snapped an arm by the elbow, pushed it back, and nearly decapitated the Trident with its own scythe-like limb. Bladed weapons weren't good. Whoomp! A blow caught Unit 1 by the head and it stumbled. To the Ava, whose every moment of existence was pain anyway, mere physical damage was just added annoyance. It was raging more at being denied the chance to tear open the enemy with its bare hands. Slamming its back into the ground, it pivoted and kicked back, aiming at the Dominatus's groin. Though the hybrid had no nerve connections to speak of there, wisely it fell back a bit. Crap, this is when Akari's most dangerous. He's barely conscious. He might not even realise what's really happening. Unfortunately, that also meant that the boy had no idea of what was simply impossible. Impossible until someone was actually crazy enough to try it. Some more. He needs to be pushed a bit more. Shinji gasped for breath, but the hyper-oxygenated nature of the LCL couldn't give any more than just keep him at the edge of blacking out. He was numb to pain. He was exhausted to the point that he operated just on instinct, barely more than what it takes to keep the Ava from berserking. He had no plan. Sawyer was the better pilot, but it was taken for granted that if you give Akari time to think, he will win. His grandstanding from earlier had come back to bite him in the ass. People expected, no, demanded the impossible as a starting point, his enemies included. As someone who had seized the mantle and the responsibility, he couldn't just give up. The strength of others contributed to the victory, but any failure was his and his alone. Come on, Akari, don't make this too easy. He didn't want to kill Shinji Akari, since it was a worthy nemesis that tends to keep immortality from being too boring, but he had no need for the Evangelion. Any of the Evangelions. They had to be destroyed. Even Soryu would have to admit to the sheer superiority of his Dominatus, the perfect blend of ancient powers and modern knowledge, rather than the clutched-together technology of the Ava. The foe lance was in itself a tool, made to manipulate, negate, or transform AT fields. Kaworu was curious about how human psychics and their abilities were so eerily similar, but he figured he had millennia to research it. He shaped the fields between the three prongs and shot out a blast of pure concussive force. The air rippled. Unit 1 couldn't dodge something it could barely see. Its AT field senses lit up only at the trigger point of the attack. Kaworu supposed something with math would do more than just shoving the Ava around, but the problem was that either the projectile or the launcher could be manipulated by Akari's damn irritating mastery over the electromagnetic spectrum. Unit 1 held enough of the foe lances dropped by Seal's MP Avas. It stabbed into the ground and used it as a crutch to get back to its feet. It stood there, its eyes glowing, the lance used as a walking staff. With a growl, Unit 1 reared back and threw the lance, its bident prongs twisting together into the point they would drill through any AT field. The Trident Warborn lazily skipped aside. How too obvious. It landed, light as a feather, balancing on one foot to push away from the follow-up to that feint. Which didn't arrive. What? He can't have run out of power yet. The Ava remained on its feet, the glow in its eyes a steady, bright orange. Oh shit, am I standing on an N2 mine? Warily, Kaworu put his other foot down and shifted his weight. His other leg remained unexploded. He sighed in relief. Unit 1 remained motionless, hunched over like a gargoyle. Perhaps, while Akari would never surrender, much as I find it inconceivable, there's no point in flailing away on senseless effort. His Trident's Dominatus was perfect. It had no power issues, its movements synchronized to his thoughts with no delay. Every cell had its own miniature core, and was more like a liquid held together by an AT field rather than a man-shaped creature. The AT field negaton properties of the lance were thus defeated, since cells could just flow back together, or fresh ones be made from raw material collected in unaffected areas. That aphorism defined him. Kaworu was paralyzed. All reason dictated he should be capitalizing on this chance, yet another was screaming not to fall to the enemy's bait. That's what Akari does. He cheats. He uses the enemy's strengths against themselves. He likes to impale them with their own body parts. No way was he going back to stabbing range. Even he was afflicted with the burning curiosity as to what insane way out of the blatantly unwinnable the boy would pull next. Why isn't he attacking? Giving back the initiative is a mistake. That's not a charge point. I don't think he can use the Earth's magnetic field. Even trying to strip electrons from the air would sap the batteries faster than anything. What is he thinking now? What is he planning? Wait. You're damn well unconscious on your feet, aren't you? Kaworu remarked while palming his face. As expected, Unit 1 gave no reply. Katsuragi-san! All teams are ready! Makoto reported. Charges have been set and the crumple zone to be calculated. Masato Katsuragi grinned and pointed up. 2 and 6! Disengage! Nerve had employees with barely any sense of self-preservation. Barring sticking them inside an Ava, in a sane and rational universe, they'd be placed in a post far away from action with nothing breakable in reach. Nerve needed tunnels and to clear debris quickly. They were Nerve's demolition corps. They had a motto, seized from the net, and paraphrased, if it interacts at all with the physical universe, we can confirm its existence. If it exists, we can blow it up. In a sane and rational universe, they wouldn't even be allowed anywhere near antimatter. Nerve had almost 1,000 N2 devices, and a capability to produce even more. UN regulations were cheerfully discarded in the face of apocalypse. Fortunately, N2 weapons were so huge that only Evangelions or specialised bombers could carry them, and most were sub-kiloton yields. Ton for ton, nuclear devices were still better. It was just that it had far less radioactive leftovers. It was that which made it also safer as a breaching charge, if only they could be shrunk down to fit. N2 mines weren't actually as much antimatter containment devices as antimatter creation devices, making dialer yield easy for an accepted common size and mass for a warhead. Nerve had an N2 charge that could be carried in a backpack, a psychoreactive crystal lace with superconductive materials and a new super-efficient capacitors made that possible. 80-field dickery allowed shaping the material down to the subatomic level. It was as stupidly dangerous as it sounded. At least a nuke couldn't be set off just by dropping it. It was the sort of thing that governments had nightmares about. Nagisa and the Earth's Cradle had demonstrated they could do the same thing, with people. The engineers slapped the discs onto certain restraining clamps and went off to wait at a relatively safe distance. Unlike nukes, however, the mini N2 charge could be set up as a directional blast due to its containment field. Incidentally, Tokyo 3 did have all those buildings retracted precautiously on top of the geofront, supposedly to protect them from battle damage. They whooped and slapped each other's backs in congratulations. It was the sort of 2-for-1 destruction the demo cores really liked. The booms were muffled, and with slow, grinding noise the 2 armament buildings slid from the many security latches that were supposed to prevent this sort of thing from happening. The fall was deceptively slow. The Trident's Dominators looked up a little too late. The buildings, each of them taller than an Evangelion and massing almost as much, crashed with enough force to register on the Richter scale as far as Kyoto 2. Kaworu looked down at the dust drifting around his feet. Like I couldn't have avoided that anyway, he muttered. They missed. The 2 buildings landed some distance away, at an angle off to either side. They were too far to provide any aid to a carry. Surprisingly, not only did the buildings remain intact, but right side up. They must have been designed to have a lower centre of gravity from the start. A part of him indulged in technical curiosity. The building facades collapsed, each revealing a foamed metal shell around a pyramidal structure. Their sides also opened out, like a flower in bloom, and double assault cannons emerged from their 4 faces. Trident's Dominators leapt straight up, barely avoiding being caught in a lethal crossfire. Kaworu looked down as he was yanked to a sudden stop, and saw field-bound steel wire wrapped round his ankles. More of your ninja wire, Ikari? Too late to cut or counteract, Kaworu erased his own AT field, and shots peppered the shield. Nerve's offensive armaments buildings were completely autonomous, and thus not subject to the Magi hack he had prepared. Unit 1 pulled, hard, and tore the Dominators right out of the sky. It bought a second or two, which was used to sprint towards one of the foe lances, and then towards the nearest attack structure. The Trident's Dominators bounced back up, having landed on a minefield. Annoyed, Nagisa with his own trident destroyed them with energy beams. The top halves exploded. Unit 1 punched into the internal anti-angel assault pods and brought out a thick plug. They were emergency fallback sites, and the heavy weapons were just to buy an Ava enough time to recharge. It was just that they were originally meant to serve that function up on the surface. An umbilical cable, Kaworu said with an amused quirk. How retro. Rather than give Akagi the chance to recharge, he attacked. Unit 1 sucked the power cells dry in moments and gestured sharply. The other armament building rose up and rushed at the Trident's Dominatus' back. The hybrid flicked away to avoid a crude strike, only to see the other arcing down. Kaworu cut his way out of the frame. All right, so I didn't expect such flagrant waste of his power. He decided to duck and dodge the old-fashioned way. And again with the lightning. Who the hell does he think he is, Emperor Palpatine? 9, 5, 27, disengage! Katsuragi, you're getting annoying! Kaworu dumped into the open comms. Eyes grew from the black of the Trident's Dominatus' palms, and from them erupted green flame. It whirled, and an expanding green shockwave blew apart surrounding buildings, and set the debris on fire, which then exploded into dust, which then set the grass on fire. I am that which beholds the heavens in the sea of chaos, Kaworu hissed. I take away your sight. Abruptly, all the screens inside the command center turned red, with the hexagonal error symbol. I am that which parts the firmament between the realms. I take away your breath. An explosion rippled underground. All of Nerve's life support systems died, and for a final time. I am the master of the materium, and the sea of time is my kingdom. I take away your future. The main screen turned into a sequence of numbers, and the words self-destruct imminent right above the 10-minute count. Laughter, clearly recognizable as laders, blasted out from all the speakers. Kaworu rubbed at his neck. Well, that should keep them occupied for a while.
Shinji, don't worry about us. We have enough people around for manual control overrides. Get to the defense point. Just beat this sack of shit. We can take care of ourselves.
Oi, I can hear you people, you know. Understood, Captain Katsuragi. Shinji Akagi's voice completely devoid of his habitual politeness. He was as brash and rude to Nagisa as he was unable to refer to anyone other than his few real friends without an honorific. His tone was dead. I know how to make him bleed. Oh, so you were awake after all. Blood tainted the LCL inside the cockpit. Shinji knew where in the plug suit the stimulant packs were located, and had smashed them to force as much of the wake-up chemicals into his bloodstream as fast as possible. Not quite asleep, not quite aware, and he could only perceive through the Evangelion's own senses. The Ava looked left to right, to Unit Zero's headless form, and Magno's Tancred still lying like a turtle on its back. LCL inside the entry plug just boiled. The air felt heavy. Its power reserves began to drain again at an alarming rate. The strands of the bident unravelled. The prongs separated and shortened. The shaft likewise retracted. Instead of the long U-shape, what remained was a wide T-shape. Lightning. Shinji Akagi loved to throw it around. The AT field could be used not just as a barrier, but as a container. Lightning crackled between the prongs of the false lance. Shinji remembered the Sunshine Kid and his cheerful obsessions. The old man had given everything. Shinji knew he'd gone off ready to die just to take out the Earth's cradle. Javal was the boy's turning point. There he learned the gods themselves are trapped in a repeating cycle of creation and destruction in the cosmos.
Think you that live we in linear time?
The old abbot had said while puffing on a pipe.
Fights in moments of Enkidu not yet won, and what do you today make prophecies arrive? Understand?
No.
Try something more fun then, we shall.
You've been over this, Akagi, Kaworu was saying. You have no superpowered evil side. As long as you cling to this flesh, you will have to deal with its limits. There's no one you can call who will answer. Where is your Emperor There was a snap hiss noise. The Dominatus palmed its face again. Did you just form Blazing Sword? Unit 1 swung the glowing red blade. The Dominatus bent at the knee and just about avoided being decapitated. 3 fingers fell off its left hand. It vanished and reappeared some distance away. It looked back at its hand. The fingers didn't grow back. That the sword was formed of plasma was just a side effect. Using the AT field to contain it gave it an impossible edge. Damn it, Akagi, he hissed. Do you know how long it took me to consider that this was even possible? Sing, last song of Atlantis. He flicked that hand and it turned into a partial Lancia Longini. The prongs bent aside and let out a shimmering curve of energy in the form of a scythe. It hummed. How much experimentation I had to do, because someday I knew you'd actually be crazy enough to try it anyway, and you'd figure it out in seconds, and you were boorish enough to do it without an activation phrase! The purple Evangelion tilted its head aside, as if asking, is that really what you want to concern yourself with right now? And then blades clashed.
I've been expecting this to happen for a long time now, actually,
Masato said while looking around. The sudden turn of events came as no surprise to anyone. No one could see the battle, but sound still came through. Some were almost in tears as to what they were missing. Don't worry, Mikoto shouted down. We've got survey teams Delta to Tango out there with cameras. I really think we should be more worried about the self-destruct timer, Shigeru added. Do we even have a self-destruct?
Sure, why not? We're very nearly a lair anyway.
Satsukui Wii screamed and removed her headset.
What is wrong with you people? You sound like you're enjoying this.
She paused, clutching at her long blonde hair.
How does that work anyway? Collapse the geofront? Overload the reactors? Set off the N2 mines?
Yes, I too would very much like to know that. Masato stared blandly at them.
You two really need to keep your heads in the game.
She spared a glance at the big screen, at the countdown just under 8 minutes now. She smirked. Such things didn't matter. If Nerve was going to explode, Ritsuko Akagi would allow no one else to push the big red button. She would destroy Neo Tokyo 3 with her own bare hands. Masato wasn't quite certain Ritsuko was as drunk as she appeared when she said that.
Why would Nagisa remove visuals but let us keep audio communications?
Stuck in her mind.
Because he's a show-off that way?
The old man did mention whatever the hell it is Gendo's doing, it'll help us more than hinder us. She patched into the mains.
This is Katsuragi. All teams are free to engage at your discretion. I repeat, all teams free to engage.
The mocking laughter returned.
Oh, you stupid bitch! Your pathetic attempts only worked so far because they were never really a threat. I have the Magi! I have the Magi sensors! I know where they are! You are all just pathetic creatures of flesh and bone, panting and running through my corridors! How can you hope to challenge a perfect, immortal machine?
I call bullshit on that!
A window appeared on the main screen, showing a figure dimly backlit by a red emergency lamp. It was female and wore a lab coat.
Ritsuko?
The figure stepped closer to the surveillance camera and grinned. Her sleek black bodysuit faded into the shadows of the corridor, making her look like a floating wraith. She lifted her right hand and made a peace sign. Static crackled in the darkness.
What? A cat? No, it's the apprentice, and here I had thought I had plumbed the depths of your people's idiocy.
You're the idiot,
Maya replied.
This is Tokyo 3. As long as Ritsuko Akagi lives, you will never own it. You're just a virus, malware, sitting on top of the Magi's processing matrix.
The main screen countdown froze and burst apart in a shower of pixels. What replaced it was a balding, somewhat pudgy face with an open sneer in monochrome red.
Do you think I am bluffing? Do you think that I joke? You all insects, you do not think at all!
A window opened up, showing 3 nervous nerve engineers just waiting around. They were crouched, taking comfort in the thickness of earth and metal between them and the open geofront. They felt reasonably safe.
Personnel serial number AG3420420723, Misara Ryoto. Personnel serial number PM2713954012, Ikazuchi Jason. Personnel serial number HG5192865844, Takano Urara.
Bulkheads slammed down on either side. Their yelps of surprise turned into shouts of fear and protest as Bakelite began to fill the sealed corridor.
We're still here, Control! What are you doing?
Stop this! Help!
No. Damn you, Leda, don't!
Masato shouted. The police suddenly cut off, leaving only frantically struggling silhouettes. Soon enough their movements stilled. Backlight contained them like insects frozen in amber.
You bastard!
Masato hissed.
You're dead! Do you hear me? Dead!
I am deathless! I do not end! I load history with the weight of my personality! I am beyond your grasp, Katsuragi! Where is Akagi, the stupid slut? Ah! No one is my equal. No one! Learn this as you die! Ever pathetic, ever fools!
The countdown resumed. Explosions rippled across the geofront surface. Corridors bathed in rivers of flame. Leda laughed.
Shut up, you pathetic copy!
Maya looked up at the camera and gave it a finger.
If you're so all-powerful, then tell me, where am I?
Little insignificant Ibuki, you can't hide from me! When I find you, suffer the price of your insolence!
Maya grinned and waited some more. The self-destruct timer passed the 4-minute mark. She began to laugh.
This is impossible! I'm not limited to the Magi sensors!
AT field sensors blared, and long rods of dark green metal appeared out of nowhere, breaking out of the floor panels and corridor sides. A low buzzing noise echoed through the deeps. The rods burst, becoming green beetles that flew through every nook and cranny. Up on the main screen, Leda's avatar looked about frantically, taking in thousands and thousands of different views all at once.
Impossible! No! What have you done?
Protocol Herod, you arrogant ass! Akagi-sensei knew this might happen someday. It doesn't matter how much input you're getting. What matters is what interprets the data.
The Magi might not be sentient, it may be hacked or dominated, but as far as an organic supercomputer could go, it really liked Maya Ibuki. The subroutines that hid her presence from Magi itself still remained, and now encompassed whatever location she was in. It was a step above the same blank data space that intentionally obscured terminal dogma.
It does not matter! You can do nothing! You remain nothing!
Maya looked tired.
I didn't really want to do this. I wish I could have given her a choice. But you selfish bastards pushed me into it. You made me do this.
What madness are you going on about now?
Dr. Leda's mind sent his awareness back to the N2 mines, effortlessly hacking and restarting the countdown. Dark metal needles pierced every warhead.
Die now, irritants! We will not meet again!
You don't scare me. And too bad for you. You have never scared her!
Indeed! Nothing more than a tedious wannabe! A cheap knockoff! The voice was distorted, but female and familiar. Being unable to conceive a single original thought is no advantage, no matter how many minds you have stolen from.
What? What is this? Purge! Kill! Delete! You... Akagi! How did you get here?
You walk through the corridors of my mind, insect, and now I shall decorate the walls of my home with your carcass. The scream was like that of a pig, smelling the blood of the slaughterhouse, and seeing the flash of a butcher's neck-slitting knife. There was a strained gurgle, turning into a static hiss. And then the lights came back on. The main screen expanded back into the multiple overlays, showing a variety of useful information. The blows were clumsy, amateurish at best. Nevertheless, Kaworu found it difficult to block or evade. Unit 1 remained utterly silent, even as its attack smashed against his defences like a living hurricane. Berserker strength and berserker speed, just barely leashed. Kaworu grit his teeth, and as their blades met again, muscles of the Dominatus bulged to force the Ava back. He swung the scythe, aiming to remove the legs, only for Unit 1 to reverse its grip and hastily deflect the strike. Futile, he whispered. Everything an Evangelion could do, the Trident Master could do better. Abruptly, the 6 wing pods of the Dominatus extended, sprouted the split prongs of a lance, which then bent inwards to turn into 6 more terror scythes. The Trident surged forth as a sphere of writhing, spinning death. Principio Eternus roared, focused its AT field on its right leg, and kicked it away. With the same unearthly grace, the Dominatus flipped in midair to land facing down. Its humming bladed wings stabbed into the ground and pushed forward, spider-like, and its first 2 pod scythes were as massive fangs snapping at the Ava. Bit by bit, Unit 1 was forced back. Its attacks may have been hasty, but its defense was perfect, responding beyond the speed of thought itself. You're the one who should be fighting to advance human potential, Akagi. You should seek to master the secrets of the first progenitor race that seeded life throughout this universe. Instead, you protect the status quo, giving no future but the bloodiest and most tyrannical regime imaginable. You admire that? I'm sick of you wasting the power that you have been given. Everything you have failed to do, I will accomplish. I will enjoy your cowardice no longer. The Dominatus spun and changed its stance back to that of a man. The terror scythe in its hands reverted back into its lance form and blasted Unit 1. Its AT-bound greatsword had the barrier property of an AT field. The beam knocked it all the way across the battlefield and into the lake. If you had just been able to brave the abyss, you wouldn't be having this problem. Sometimes you just had doubts about Akagi as his equal. Morality is a choice, a luxury only for those with power. How could he be so stupid as to deny something that simple? First, have the ability to protect your beliefs. Everything else follows. The starving can only eat or die. If you can't defend your ideals, then you can only die for them. Is that the extent of your sacrifice? Is that all you can give for all the trust thrown your way? Drown in your weakness! Pillars of fresh water rose and burst as he began bombarding the lake. Kaworu's rage was beyond words, but more of disappointment than in defeat. I can't beat him, Shinji had to admit to himself. Surprising himself, this admission did not arrive with any bitterness. Shinji Akagi floated, weightless and numb. The light wavering upon the surface of the water stung his eyes and held up an arm over his face. A shadow passed over the glare, a silhouette of a woman in a lab coat, starkly outlined against the glare.
She is angry with you,
said the silhouette.
She wonders why you would not let her fight.
No. The Berserker's power, it's not enough. I need to plan. I need a plan. He gurgled into the strange ether surrounding him. I can't win without a plan. Brute force, I can easily redirect it.
First you lose the trust in yourself, then you lose the trust in your loyal partner, and you wonder why you are weak.
This is too important to leave to blind optimism, he replied in the same emotionless tone. When all you have is a hammer, all things become... That's why I made sure there are other tools. The womanly silhouette giggled.
If there is a hole, it is a man's job to thrust into it.
Not getting the point. The figure lunged suddenly, and Shinji Akagi found a warm hand over his face.
There is power beyond imagination. All she wants is your approval. She is loyal. Why do you spurn her?
Too much to do. Too much. I can't give up now. I won't abandon them.
Nagisa's sacrifice is humanity. You cling to the idea you can somehow solve all this without throwing away that last part of you that cares. Only a human can kill a monster. Stubbornly proclaiming your own power is enough. It is pride. It is just ego. You arrogant whelp.
Shinji closed his eyes and let it wash over him. In the end, he was afraid. He couldn't bear to lose, to never again touch those that he loved. "I can't beat him," he said again. He grabbed at the hand covering his face and pulled it off. He snarled at the lady whose fingernails left a bloody gash on his cheek. "But I don't have to win. I just have to make sure he loses." She smiled.
"Then say my name. Speak and crush all those who stand before us."
"Principio Eternus."
"No."
Shinji clenched his fist. Pride was the least of the things he could sacrifice. He wanted to live. In the end, he found he could be that selfish. It was heartening in a way. It was so goddamn normal as a goal. Mother.
"Yes?"
The Great Mother. The Great Mother who devours her young.
"Oh, lovely."
You are the one who will survive. You are the last to take the throne. Let the snake eat its own tail.
"Oh my. My.
She clapped her hands together, and though still completely in shadow, he could almost see her satisfied smile. "Hi, Mom. Let's rock." The sync ratio passed 200%. He could hear electric guitars. The contact experiment was thorough like that. With a sharp crackling noise, the surface of the underground lake froze over into thick sheets glittering in the afternoon light. Shards of light played upon the geofront's walls. "Okay, not unprecedented," Kaworu noted. "Since we use the AT field to direct energy flow anyway, modifying thermal energy from the surroundings is not unfeasible or impractical." He blasted at the ice sheath, but even as large chunks and craters were gouged from the covering, the layers reformed almost as quickly.
"It won't save you, Akari,"
he shouted into the open radio. "There is no such thing as a perfect defense. This shield won't last forever. I can do this all damn week!" He stopped as he felt a tingle at the back of his mind. "Oh, what is it now? Later, you're dead again?" Why was he always interrupted with trivialities? Akari probably enjoys this sort of thing, but isn't it just a waste of time? Better to grow some competent minions than have to recruit them. Back at the command center, Misato put her face in her hands, trying to shut out the world. She took several deep breaths and put on a happy face. Okay then. She was ready to face this strange new turn of weirdness. "Nice one! Right in the nick of time!" commented Makoto. "Hi, Maya!" he raved to the screen.
Hello. "Thank you for the timely save,"
Satsuki added through grit teeth. She looked like she wanted to reach out and drag the other young woman right out of the screen so she could sit in her chair and actually do her job.
"Not really. I mean, Ritsuko-senpai knew what was happening. Only when later unlocked Magi's core functions could we do something."
"Say, what is Nerve's self-destruct mechanism anyway?" Shigeru piped up.
"There are several nuclear devices strategically placed around the geofront and central dogma. They're very dirty bombs, and have to make sure that once the geofront collapses, the land above and around it can't be dug up or even used for at least 100 years.
"Nice," Shigeru replied, smoothing back his long hair and grinning. He wasn't upset at all at the sheer overkill.
"Hey! Just because we're not under threat of immediate destruction doesn't mean we're not under threat of imminent destruction. You all still have work to do!"
Misato began to point all around.
"I want a damage and casualty report, and the site defense teams ready on their triggers. Where are the recovery teams?"
"Ayanami lives. Kirishima is exercising her vocabulary. She's got a smattering of Greek and Turkish expletives now." The voice, though booming and faintly tinged with malice, had the same resigned tone that so characterized Ritsuko recently.
"Ritsuko, what happened to you?"
"Remember how Unit Zero's cortex is incomplete, and why the Magi has to supplement the rest of its control system? It's sort of like that, but not really."
"Aren't you supposed to be in a coma or something?"
"Apparently, certain factors seem intent on dragging me kicking and screaming back into not completely objective reality. My little assistant here has been keeping some naughty secrets. And damn, this is annoying, Maya. How do I stop this needlessly dramatic echoing voice?"
I don't know. I mean, you should know more about the magic at this point than I'll ever be able to understand.
Ugh. Is this permanent? Misato cupped her hands over her ears. Sadly, no. Once I disconnect, I probably will never be able to achieve this link-up again. My human brain will have no memory of what I'm doing right now. The transfer is read-only. A pity. I can somewhat understand Lady's egomania now. It is utterly empowering. What it's like to think 1,000 different thoughts and behold 1,000 different vistas all at the same time. Tokyo 3 is mine, by all your powers combined. Behold, for I am, as a god machine, the destroyer of worlds. Oh.
Don't go back to that place, Ritsuko-senpai. Remember what we have to do.
For all the bluster Dr. Leda indulged, there was just something so very right about hearing those same boasts in a feminine voice. Perhaps because the people around actually believed Dr. Akagi would really burn the world if and when she finally snaps.
Oh, right. All channels open. Override security lockdown. What's going on, Maya?
Misato spared a glance at the main screen and the trident hovering over the lake.
Misato-senpai, listen. We're really just here to deliver a message from Gendo. It's important enough that Akagi-senpai had to beat Dr. Leda at his own game. It was just a shortcut when his attempt to acquire the access point for those subroutines.
But worth doing on its own anyway. Misato leaned back on her chair and looped her fingers together.
I see. Are you working for him now? No. Well, yes. He is Nerve's commander after all. Not showing up for one attack is a bit illegal, but I do want to shoot him repeatedly, so it balances out.
A sickeningly cheery song drifted through the speakers.
I'm a decorating my walls with my enemies and trails. Please stop going there, senpai.
Kaoru Nagisa felt very put upon. Objectively, he knew the universe was inherently unfair. However, he tried very hard to find proof that in some level it just has to make sense. The beings that created Lilith and Adam were of such power beyond such puerile concepts as conquest. He can only gather that they sent out the black and red moons, which for all the godlike power of the creatures they contained, were nothing more than terraforming agents. Life, it seemed, was the end in of itself for the universe. What beings were those? What other wonders could they have shaped? And where were they now? These were the thoughts that never concerned humans, so consumed by their selfish little desires in their single, much-abused world. He had an eternity to unravel these mysteries. If only short-sighted fools stopped getting in his way. He just tried so hard, so very hard, sacrificing so much, and no one appreciated just how much he did for the greater good. It was so discouraging. He was spiteful enough to keep doing it anyway. Some days it was all he had to keep it going.
Hey! Listen!
The radio buzzed.
Gendo Akari's gone down to Terminal Dogma and he left me a message. Shinji-kun, can you hear me? And Nagisa, you need to hear this too.
And now Ibuki interrupts.
Fine.
What was one more annoyance in a lifetime spent enduring indignities? Gendo Akari stood before the massive blast door blocking entry into Terminal Dogma. He turned around just a bit, leaving most of his face in shadow. His eyeglasses glinted. Tell those children to hurry up with their squabbling. Tell them the enemy's gate is down. If they can't decide which queen to sacrifice in the endgame, then I will decide for them. If they want the key to everything, let them seek me out in the end of the world. And of course, Gendo Akari isn't even polite enough to properly stab me in the back, Kaoru sighed. He just goes off to do his own whatever, expecting the rest of us to live up to our bargains anyway. The arrogant bastard. He was getting tired of all this. Trident's Dominatus was a perfect killing machine, tireless, unflinching and unstoppable. Kaoru was breathing hard. He rubbed at his arms, trying to get his blood flowing hot again. Unlike the primitive Ava plug system, which used LCL both as a linker and impact buffer, the Dominatus kept him connected and safe, with a controlled inertia-dampening localized AT field. Such was the benefit of an angel that used multiple cores. Each nucleus in every machine cell had the equivalent of a miniature S2 energy tap. All combined, it was proclaimed an absolute terror of incalculable, truly monstrous potential. Kaworu Nagisa never did like feeling weak. He looked at his thin, effeminate fingers and clenched his hand into a fist. There were several different forms of immortality offered by the cradle to its children, but immortal didn't mean undying. His own physical immortality only meant that while his cells inevitably did die, they didn't decay. The telomerase chains in his cells would replace them without fail, enabling a lifespan marked in millennia. His blood was, of course, type O. It was his blood that cycled through Lorenz Keel's body, keeping the old man alert and dangerous even in his twilight years. It was his organs that went into other humans that so carelessly abused their own bodies. If the world only knew that hybrids of his type were universal donors, he had no illusions about how eagerly they would start cloning and butchering to give mere men even a sliver of his potential. In fact, that was how Seal had managed to convince more than several others into the conspiracy. He was not a child. He had never been a child. And you, Akari, do you really think you can deliver us all from this evil? You only support the world that produces such injustice. He couldn't lose this. He was a perfect genetic successor. Akari was just a flawed accident, a mutation really, the freak performer in the evolutionary circus. Kaworu felt superior for everything in his life, told him that he was superior, and all the pain he suffered was for the benefit of those weaker who wanted to leech from his power. In fact, he could even say that he ends it right where it begins, as the keymaster of the first progenitor race. Though he was sterile, he could still state that from his loins would come a newer, better humanity, free of its crippling self-doubts and freakish uncertainties. Some days he just wanted to see the world burn. He was far too sensible though, recognising that killing everything else would just leave him with an eternity of sheer boredom. He wouldn't die. He would never give his torturers that satisfaction. Humanity was his prize to be won. If they valued it so little, he would take it instead. Only the Akaris remained to impede his goal. Tricky buggers, the both of them. He wondered if they realised that just as much as they united to combat his scenario, he was also playing them off each other. He'd always been a better long-term planner. Shinji Kaworu may criticise him for his sadism in the short term, or the impatience that tainted his methods, but the other very rarely made plans that went out further than a few weeks, a month at the most. This gave enough flexibility, but it required much in the way of initiative from those tapped to assist. It also meant that the hands-off approach had much of its influence in the indirect. The accumulation of power didn't flow the other way. The only reason the boy had survived so far was his tendency of making up and pulling off multi-layered battle plans in moments. Pockmarks appeared in the glaring lake surface with sucking glorp sounds. The holes were large, at least 10 metres across, and deep enough that water railed right back up the chasm. Surprisingly, the rush of fresh water didn't freeze. Of course there's a goddamn charging station at the bottom of the lake, he mused, scolding himself. They'd prepared that much. Though his connection with the Dominatus was only vaguely similar to the utility of hive mind, it did note that there were several million tons of water in that lake, and that Akari could do this latest bit of insanity functionally forever. Kaworu debated internally whether he should fire into the deliberate weaknesses in the ice shield when a geyser erupted from one of the nearby gaps. From the plume ejected a round frozen boulder, spinning and shedding flakes of ice. He reacted with fluid ease, shattering that icy globe with a slash of the trident in scythe form. Oh, come on. This is just sad. You're reduced to throwing things at me now. A part of him remembered the underground lake was about 3 kilometres end to end, and as long as he was above it, Akari could hit him with practically any angle from below. The Dominatus flicked its wing pods and let 2 ice spikes collide from opposite directions. Pressurised pillars of water fountain out of the holes. An entertaining new trick, but, okay, now spikes, that makes more sense. He just barely moved aside, and another globe of ice burst out of a geyser. It exploded into a shower of jagged shards. And now we have exploding death spheres. Nice. A few scratches appeared on his armoured shell. Interesting. Apparently, with atoms aligned so well, it might as well be diamond. How did you manage this? Probably with a thought like, "Yeah, I needs to stab Nagisa. I needs me stabbing influence. But all I have is water. Then water I shall use." Oh, screw you too, Akari. Kaworu thought it ironic that it was Shinji Akari's inability to manipulate the AT field to any great degree of his own experiments that would end up being the prime advantage. The boy had no AT field of his own. If he could manipulate that, he'd be orange goo in moments. But he could make use of Ayaname's. It was a connection so intimate and intricate that even sex seemed like an afterthought. Those same techniques, once applied to the Evangelion, helped with mental disciplines and split-mind coordination learned from Javal, turned into interesting actualizations once linked to the monstrous power of the Eva. A high-pressure jet of water somehow bent to follow him as he dodged about. Several other streams joined in, trying to tap into a surely very easily inaccessible trap. It was quite pretty in its own way, the light from above ground making little rainbows in the mist. Ridiculous. It was true that necessity was the mother of invention, but as he floated there, he mused, "At least I managed to give myself the proper tools, that such unlikely creativity is not necessary." It was just that much less stressful. Come now, this is just embarrassing. Holy crap, that's a dragon! The columns of water came together, and out from the lunge a very recognisable open maw filled with rows of sharp teeth. The Dominatus had to move quickly to keep from being snapped into halves. Having missed, the dragon head exploded into harmless water again. Ice sculptures. You're reduced to attacking me with ice sculptures now. 6 more water pillars combined, twisting rope-like at the base, and at its head a snapping jaw. The crackling of ice forming over the guided whip of water, like a skin, sounded very much like an enraged animal roar. Hurriedly, he reformed his scythe and cut the dragon head in two. The bisected halves fell away, but a new one formed just as quickly from the liquid core. The trident Dominatus vanished and reappeared, all the way across the geofront from the lake. No mere human should be this stupidly skilled with shaping the AT field. It was so unfair. Sometimes he felt the entire universe existed just to grind his hopes into the dirt. He didn't consider being a mass murderer worth thinking about, since karma was just another human delusion, reaching out for the immortality they may not have. What mattered was social acceptability, and he was in the position to mould that once the last little details were ironed out. No fate but what we make. The old men of Seal and their reliance of prophecy, and all the suffering he had to endure because of it, it was a sort of weakness he wanted to expunge from the world. A massive hand broke out of the ice. The hand itself was made of ice, and as a thing that seemed more like a walking castle than anything else, if shaped vaguely like a man, emerged from the lake, the Dominator's hindbrains forcefully reminded him, millions of tons of water. "I knew I should have stayed in bed today," said Akagi. "These boys, these utter drama queens, they just don't stop." Makoto Hyuga didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or wet his pants in terror. He groaned while rubbing at his eyes. "I've seen this happen, but it was the big bad that did it." "So use fire. That can't possibly be any more obvious. Why ice? Isn't lightning part of the air element anyway?" Shigeru added with a grimace. "Ice is Ayaname's theme." "Amazing! So even a biotechnological intelligence can get headaches. It's hard to overstate my frustration. Now everybody shut the hell up for a minute." A series of small explosions rippled across central dogma. "Oh, sometimes I hate being right all the time." The main screens fizzled but went back. Some of the views changed again to a different angle as the previous cameras were destroyed. "What's happening?" "Later did leave harmful instructions in the event he was driven from the Magi. Given his ego, likely just to be a vindicative jerk rather than prudent planning. I'm going to be too busy trying to contain the damage." "And I'll have to defend Ritsuko-senpai's physical body," Mai added with a bolt pistol in hand. "She's just connected to the Magi, not inside it. I can't chase after Gendo, sorry." "We do what we must because we can." "This isn't good," Masato whispered. "Explain!" "Every defense can be breached, every barrier worn down eventually. Shinji doesn't have practically infinite reserves of energy like that thing they fought earlier. Being bigger just might have put him at a disadvantage." For whom did he fight a delaying action? "What weapons do we still have?"
None on the geofront level. The retracted armament buildings are now manned, and while there is something weird blocking the surface, I've opened up all the elevators and all access hatches. Thanks. I want missiles and cannons ready to fire. Keep targeting systems on passive mode. Let's see first what Shinji's plan is. Prepare for supporting fire.
Kaworu's thoughts went more like, what magnificently overdone theft. Akagi, you total cheater! Second only to stabbing enemies with their own body parts was Shinji Akagi's popularized tendency to gank and use techniques against their original users. The massive shape Unit 1 wore itself around was slow, unwieldy and inefficient, but it could shrug off damage in the same manner as his Dominatus. He circled around the strange new shape of its enemy, like a fly hovering around a buffalo's head. The glowing blade of the scythe-formed tridents was several times longer than his Dominatus was tall. It left deep wounds in the hulking, ineffectually flailing giant. Dark waters bled out of the gap, only to quickly refreeze. The contents are meaningless, Kaworu figured out. It's the AT field itself. If my tridents is held together by the AT field interaction between its cells, then this thing seems to hold together by a very definitely shaped AT field. The ice is just there to show Akagi that he does indeed have the correct shape. The focus that required. This was on a completely different level to making barriers and pushing things into place with an AT field. Even the improvised construction techniques used to rush Castle Sternbrand into shape couldn't go that far. There were angles and curves, and down to every last point, it was as if Shinji Akagi had convinced himself, hey, I'm actually a monster at least twice as tall as the Eiffel Tower. He could see it, if he just went further than the visible band in the EM spectrum. It sang a litany in resonance as the AT field flowed around, caressing the invisible boundaries that made things real. Just like with the Seal Beast, several Lancia-formed points, nodes where a single AT field could be folded over and over to serve in layers, as if generated by an army of angels. It stood hunched over with a large smooth hump over its shoulders, and its head was a scowling skull mask jutting out of its centre torso. Its left arm ended in large claw gauntlets, and the right arm was a massive cannon of dark ice. I wonder if Akagi realizes that a Reaver Battle Titan should only really stand a bit taller than an upright Evangelion. The arm cannon swung up, and a spray of snow ejected out of the side vents. There was a loud crack, and frozen barrels shattered. The geofront shook. On the far end, a large section of the retaining wall collapsed. Kaworu switched views from a thermal to a full electromag scan. Superconducting wires. So that's how he's doing it. And now he's just damn well improvised a Gauss cannon out of water and wire! Ironically, for all that Shinji Akagi didn't plan too far to allow for the unexpected and let allies proceed best by their own initiative and expertise, so did Kaworu refuse to make any fixed tactical plans against any enemy either. Angels were predictable. They would only adapt after the fact, if they somehow managed to survive the strike. In much the same way that Nerve expected to weather the storm of angel attacks, so did Kaworu sometimes consider the Ava pilots to be as unto a force of nature. Soyu's volcanic temper was obvious, and Ayanami's glacial persistence was known to all, but Akagi's wrath was as all-encompassing and erratic as a typhoon. If you could predict him, you'd be insane, and while I'm rational enough to admit to being a sociopath at times, my remaining sanity points are too precious to waste on things like that. Heavy great bolter fired shells the size of a small house, about 2 bedrooms and a bath. Somewhere inside the walking ice tighter were chewed up lumps of metal, concrete and explosives, all combined into rough cylindrical slugs the size of an entire apartment level. You're never going to hit me, Kaworu shouted. The next shot was a more shotgun-like spread. You still have to point your gun where you want to aim, and I can see that. The third shot out burst into a shower of razor-sharp knives. Kaworu plucked one out of the air. Actual knives. Though made of ice, it had a recognisable blade and handle, as if an Ava might decide to chop up some equally implausibly huge carrots. This sort of attention to detail is starting to go beyond what's humanly possible, no matter how much of a savant. Apparently the solution to the disparity in size and manoeuvrability was to literally fill the air with knives. In the distant past, a man collapsed and writhed as a powerful vision assailed him as he stood before the gates of Babylon. Kaworu frowned. He did have one area of unchallenged expertise, however. The Reproban Lancia, false lances, were all based upon Adam's Lancia Longini. His hybrid had all the qualities of the lance, and the ability to negate AT fields was the secret to its fluid form. The wing pods separated from the Dominatus, and dazzling white rings sprouted from its back. Flapping lazily, it availed us some distance while the funnel-shaped pods buzzed around Unit 1's Reaver shell. These lashed away at the ground around the Ice Titan, making strange symbols. Though the S2 engine did provide effectively infinite energy, Kaworu had to pause for a while to gather the requisite power. The eyes of the head glowed red. If Unit 1 was supercooling the environment around itself, the heat must go somewhere else. Contained and carefully separate from the rest of the structure, the Ava kept a reserve of steam. Secondary gun mounts weren't just for show. They went active, firing explosive ice bullets using compressed air. The action tended to melt the channels after a while, but Unit 1 just sprouted replacements. That was not static filling the main screen of Nerve's command center. There was just that much flashing bits and gubbins in the air. There was a shrill note, and everything just stopped. The floating knives dropped, and slowly the view cleared. The Ice Titan struggled against multiple loops of glowing green chains, anchored to a rotating circle around its feet, burning with power and symbols old as the stars themselves. Just like as with the beast, it could apply no leverage to break out of the trap. Its cannon arm poked out of the bindings. Kaworu pointed with his trident, and with a yell, scoured the weapon out of existence. Good. Shinji Akagi was a frightening combatant, and Gendo Akagi's name was synonymous with manipulative bastardness. But it was Yu Akagi who took Lilith's body and figured out what makes the Great Mother tick. It was she who put that into the inferior copy that were the Avas. He could reliably plan for something to happen, just not the sequence leading up to it. Ice cracked as it struggled. Unit 1's roar of frustration carried through. Its claws couldn't cut the chains. The strength of the chains were directly proportional to AT field being used. It used the captive's own strength to reinforce its trap. No matter how much it tried to cut, chains weren't something that could be stabbed. It kept trying anyway, for it was all it knew to do. The Trident Dominatus drifted closer. "Pitiful," said Kaworu, "but this was inevitable." Unit 1 didn't have the limitless potential of Unit 2 with its S2 engine, or Unit 0, second and equally powerful source of an AT field with its immortal pilot. It raged and it roared, and as far as its fell mind could recognise, it had its own bloody pride. Unit 1 was the strongest Evangelion in Neo Tokyo 3. And then it became as unto knives. The Dominatus was caught off guard and impaled through the chest. Fortunately, its alert roving bits blasted the offended blade and allowed it to retreat with frantic flapping. It was a spiky ball of pure lethal intent. There were glowing red eyes barely discernible at the centre of that mass. Everything else was a knife. Some of those knives had serrated edges. A careful look would show the teeth were actually smaller knives. There were cleavers, there were shankers, there were thin blades and thick blades, curved blades and long blades, fine edges and ones that looked as if edged flint. Not swords nor daggers nor any implement of war. Outside of the bindings, the blades were brittle and began to fall apart under their own weight. Kaworu pulled out the shard from his chest, and the Dominatus's wound closed up in moments. "If I had sync ratio like an Evangelion, I'd be dead now," he muttered. He looked up to see that for all Unit 1 moved like some sort of absurdly overspined hedgehog, it was still very effectively trapped. He smirked. "Akari, nature gives spines to discourage larger predators. Are you frightened? Have you entered that prey mentality yet? It's time to put you out of my misery." And he slashed. And Unit 1 burned. He slashed and it burned. He cut and it bled. He laughed in its face as it roared, exposed again to the world that let so many suffer for no real purpose at all. Each of his wing pods were in themselves complete, self-deterministic angels, if a bit immature. One of them hovered close by, and with a nod from its big-eyed, bug-shaped head conveyed, "Aren't you in stabbing range again?" He felt a brief flash of nervous fear at the reminder, but the restraints on Unit 1 were quite secure. Smaller chains crisscrossed over, and the larger primary built bindings. The Dominatus's arms lengthened out to twin pry bars. It jammed the ends into the seams of Unit 1 chest armour, and began to pull free the armour restraints. He could hear screaming. The armour was physically bolted into the Ava's body, and pulling them open also tore out chunks from the ribs. At the absurdly high sync ratio necessary for these desperation tactics, he had little doubt Shinji was physically experiencing the stigmata effect of all the synchronization. He snorted. It wasn't a fatal wound. Ikari was just being a pansy. The glow in Unit 1's eyes switched from red to white. The beast would never have gotten free. However, what the bindings trapped was not Unit 1's true body. It was you, Ikari, who, quite willingly, decided to destroy her physical body and be trapped inside an Evangelion that was a pain-maddened beast at the best of times, just for the sake of a scenario that would perhaps kick destiny in the balls. That was cold ruthlessness right there. The ice melted. The chains hung slack. Unit 1 dropped. Kara Nagisa thought, "Oh, fuck!" A long while ago, Masato had complained to Ritsuko about a lack of big-ass cannons inside the geofront. For the most part, that had been addressed. Large energy weapons couldn't be placed on the geofront surface because the antimatter guns would just poke straight through the roof should they miss. Lasers, being coherent light and heat, were next to useless against AT fields. Positron rifles and cannons were good enough, but once up to heavy positron cannons it was just overkill. They were designed to blast through AT fields in 1 or 2 hits, and unfortunately they just go through all the layers of Nerve Tokyo 3 armour as easily. There were a lot of sensors looking down on the geofront surface, placed high up on the ceiling and walls. These ones were hardest to damage, and all combined were the most reliable provider of internal monitoring and targeting data for the main screen. If collateral damage was the problem, or the expense in making last-ditch defences at the risk of lessened initial defences, or the fact that gun ports on the surface had limited firing arcs that might interfere with Evangelion positioning, then why not have guns that can be used up on the city level and also point down at the geofront level? In his had a mass-production positron cannon midway between the rifle and heavy cannon. Alone, they would scar the surface, but at least the geofront surface of packed earth was a kilometre deep before going into the strange material. Focusing fire on one point, they could approximate a Gargant-scale cannon. Better yet, while able to engage both within and without, they were hidden and secure from Magi hacking. For such a powerful asset, it did have a worrying tendency of shutting down when needed most. There were also loads and loads of heavy bolter and autocannons up there in among the armament buildings. There were launchers and there were mortars. For quite a long while, Masato Katsuragi heard nothing from Shinji Ikari. Were it not for the readouts from life support, she would have thought he was unconscious. Whatever reason he had for keeping silent, hearing his voice again, shrill and full of pain, had her throw caution and planning to the winds. Her boy was hurting, and she had enough of waiting for the proper moment to strike. "Fire! Fire! Open up with everything you've got!" And then it was like standing in the rain without getting wet. The shapeless glob of water froze in midair, and then there were teeth. Fast! Kaworu created a small barrier and splattered one of the heads. 2 more twisted impossibly in midair and reared up to bite at his flanks. And they have ice breath! Ice breath! Damn it, Ikari! He saw one of his ring pods get caught inside a cone of supercooled air, and the poor thing instantly dropped. It shattered on the ground. Though made of the same living metal as the Dominatus, it would take hours before it would melt back into a usable state. I see. So if Ikari can separate and keep portions of my living metal frozen away, I'll have to manufacture more cells right out of ambient mass. It wasn't quite clear that it was not normal ice. Anything that ice enclosed, Ikari could apparently telekinetically summon. The waters were faintly purplish, perhaps they had enough metallic salts diffused into them. He could whittle away at my reserves until he actually gets to the part which does not change. Me, here, in the cockpit. It was like a pearl, the controlling core within a beast with uncountable other cores, covered with a hard shell that was practically invulnerable. It could move around all throughout the body to avoid damage. Nonetheless, Kaworu didn't feel perfectly safe. The beast of steel was brutal, terrifying in its overpowering might. This tactic was even more fluid, able to recover instantly, and elegant in its simplicity. Now how the hell is he doing this? Where the dragon heads intersected with threshold barrage attacks, they burst into vapour or ragged chunks of ice. No matter, the Hydra could never run out of heads. Being made of water, Burning the stumps wouldn't help. They were relentless and unending, because Masato Katsuragi was bringing the lake to the centre of the battlefield. Antimatter weapons were awesome like that. Kaworu was in hell. It was made of bullets and beams and dragon heads. He couldn't simply blink and be gone. The writhing loops filled the sky against the backdrop of hostile gunfire. Airburst-shaped charge artillery left fan-shaped trails and tracers-stitched patterns in the air. A new dragon head could form at any point. He found to his dismay as he formed an AT field barrier sphere. It was covered over with solid ice in moments. Kaworu pulsed his awareness and shattered the cage. It was a Hydra. A Hydra storm. The Trident Dominatus was masked of the waters. All the waters. He wouldn't abide this insult. It dropped and skimmed close to the ground, very narrowly evading the torrent of attacks, smashing up the landscape all around it. Its winged pods returned to give it that needed extra bit of agility. A dragon head began chewing up the grassland right in front, and Kaworu reached out. He slammed both palms on the tip of its upper jawline, and flipped up and over to land right between the eyes. The Dominatus wings sprouted hot plasma contained within lances and turned into a blur of spinning havoc, running up the neck and cutting down oddly weaponized ice sculptures left and right. Glittering chips and flakes began to fog up the scene. The overhead gun shot out the frozen bridge from under it, and he burned to close the distance. Time passed slowly. Kaworu watched the dragon head fall apart before his eyes, stretching out a single second. Aha! So that's how he controls them. At the centre of each Hydra head was a filament-thin thread of superconductive metal. We know how to bend lasers, so wrapping an AT field around a magnetic field shouldn't be too different. The artistic flourish of an actual snake-like visage at the end was totally unnecessary. A spike would have done just as well, but Kaworu could only savour such anal retentive attention to detail. It was something like programming, really, in how the Lancia, in close proximity to the Ava, could serve as logic gates to produce the Hydra with automatic ease. Attention could then be devoted to aiming the damn things. There were so many and so close that with just the bare minimum of movement he dodged and made them hit each other. Of course, the cones of cold had no effect on other creatures of shaped ice. Kaworu had to close up under another spherical barrier, as the spray came from all angles. The Dominatus slapped a fist into its palm and expanded its field. It flash-boiled everything around it, and almost invisible loops of wire drifted in the wind. Then just as quickly turned around to slash with its lance trident. There was a ringing slap of strange metal upon metal, and a faux lance activated in the form of a blazing sword spun up and above. The Hydra were just again decoys to cover a single attack. Kaworu grinned. Like I couldn't see that one coming. And then he felt Unit 1's fingers digging into his eyeballs. He continued to grin. The Hydra, in the obvious sense, they were snakes of ice. From a different perspective, they were bridges. They allowed Unit 1 to finally get up into the air to negate Nagisa's flight advantage. The Ava grappled and forced the Warborn down through frozen serpent trails. The Ice Dragon, no longer supported by the AT field, began to break under its own weight. The two smashed into the ground and were then buried under several thousand tons of ice. Unit 1 burst out of the small mountain of the slowly melting ice blocks, carrying the Trident's Dominatus overhead with both hands. With a baneful roar, it brought the enemy down sharply, cracking it over its knee. Yeah, nice combo, Kaworu said blandly. It would have worked if I actually had a spine that would break. In a similar serpentine matter, the Dominatus twisted upon its shattered internal structure to wrap its hands around Unit 1's neck. Slowly, the Ava's head began to turn. Snicket! 3 short metal claws emerged from between Unit 1's knuckles. The Trident somehow managed to imply, "Oh, you've got to be shitting me," before being stabbed repeatedly in the face. Again. Its wing pods unfolded out into spider-like arms, all ending in stabbing points. It could do that one. 6. Better 2. Unit 1's eyes flashed. Lightning crackled between its shoulder pylons. Oh, that. Lightning was more than just electricity, after all. It was also the fourth state of matter, and the back and forth of how it carried directed plasma. It was like a chainsaw made of raw energy. Not today. Desperate strength enabled him to uppercut Unit 1 just under the chin, sending it tumbling out at a small hill. Trident's dominatus pushed away tubes of ice large enough too, and its 6 eyes shone with orange glee. It bent at the waist and jumped. It caught the falling lance, thrown earlier, and would have impaled him had he remained there to take a breather. "Is that it? Even I can see this far." He pointed at the purple Ava, trying to push off the ground with shaky arms. "Just because it's not something I'd ever consider doing, doesn't mean it's actually any what is that beeping noise?" He turned to see an Ava scale-shaped charge mine glued onto the lance with a dollop of basilisk gel. So that's why balance felt off. And at head level, the charge went off and blew the Dominatus's head right off its shoulders. Ah! The feedback was dampened, but it hurt all the same. Kaworu clutched at his head and screamed, ordered, demanded the Dominatus to recover right now, damn it! He wreathed about as if drunk, uncaring about how undignified it might look, compared to how the erratic movement might make it more difficult for the Ava to capitalise on the brief window of vulnerability. The wing pod shortened, and like a plant bud, a Y-shaped tendril grew out of the Dominatus's neck, the ends thickening out into the jester cap helmet of the Warborn. Owlish orange eyes popped out and frantically searched for the enemy. All around. Up the air. Unit 1 had vanished. Not good. Where? There was a distinct poof and a nearby clink as Kaworu felt something loop and wrap around his legs. Some distance away, Magnol's Tancred was sitting on its haunches and its weight anchored the tow cable. He too had forgotten about Kirishima. The land dreadnought did run off a fusion reactor, but not directly. It pumped energy into capacitors, which then provided the machine with motive power. Destroying the reactor just disabled the steady recharge whenever it wasn't moving. An intense pulse of the AT field told Kaworu where his nemesis perched. Up on the geofront wall, crouched upon the false Lancia Longini that Akari had thrown 8 minutes earlier. The lance bent backwards like a bow, its point touching the wall. The Ava had its mouth open, as if laughing. Kaworu felt the quantum wave collapse. He was certain. Whatever he chose, stay, fight or flee, or any combination thereof, he was going to get tackled full force and he was going to get knocked into that underground lake. He accepted it. His only irritation was the uncertainty, if Akari had planned it this way all the way back to first exchange of blows, or if it was another lucky happenstance. With a ping, Principio Eternus brought down its own AT field that pinned it to the wall. The lance pulled itself out. The Ava flew at just under Mach 2. It collided with the Warborn. Shinji felt his collarbones break from the impact. The two war machines blew through the distance, into and out of one of the downed armament buildings, scraped the ground, bounced up and slammed into the lake. Large chunks of ice rained upon the surface. The sound was like that of a crackling campfire. But the lake was rising. All the water was freezing. It was a hard lump, except for the fine sphere of absolute territory, where with the intense pressure it remained liquid, though temperature was as cold as it could possibly get. "Nagisa," Shinji whispered through cracked, bluing lips. "It's perfect, right? It's non-conductive? The machine cells won't let my lightning reach you?" Unit 1's right arm had sunk into the enemy's chest. He showed that with the other hand he held an extended umbilical power cable. But at low enough temperatures, we all become superconductive. Kaworu activated his own AT field, floating and curling up into a ball to make sure he touched absolutely nothing. "Don't be an idiot, Akari! You'll electrocute yourself too!" The living metal flesh of the Dominatus was starting to collapse into itself. "Don't!" Kaworu didn't want him to die. Shinji knew this, as like that of a child who didn't want his favourite toy to be taken away. Even assuming he was allowed to live out his natural lifespan, Kaworu would still instigate ever-present warfare and brutality, always poking and prodding and driving humanity to change or be destroyed. They would perhaps be strong, but they would never know peace. Even monstrous men such as Gendo Akari or Lorenz Keel sought an end to pain. Kaworu wants us all to love suffering, to suffer as he had suffered, and because he can never be whole, wants man to never ever rest and find completion in his life. The boy wasn't naive enough to miss that the virtue of the grim, dark future was of the most bloody, tyrannic regime imaginable. That was his potential too. Even powerful men as Gendo and Keel could easily die with a bullet to the brain. Here, at this moment, Shinji could at least rid the world of a monster. He grit his teeth and let loose the lightning. The underground lake exploded. Icebergs the size of battleships tumbled and crashed. Above ground, the dark and viscous AT field slowly faded. A hatch opened up, and a very exhausted troop of nerve technicians emerged to helping hands and frantic questions. They had no words to describe the experience. With the jamming gone, the outside world could now reconnect the comm lines to the geofront. The first thing they heard was the scream of a soul dying. Misato didn't want the screaming to stop, for she knew, and as she felt now, that the silence would be even more unbearable. It stopped, suddenly, and the silence was broken only by the loud thud of a spire of ice falling over. The main screen was blank. One of the more useful camera windows showed Rei Ayanami firmly belted into a gurney and heavily sedated. The retrieval crew found her shaking in the grip of a strong seizure. It was a mercy for everyone she was unconscious.
We don't got no signal from Unit 1,
Satsuki said, cringing as the bearer of bad news. Watch what you say, Misato muttered tonelessly. We thought... This has happened before, Makoto added in her place. There's still hope.
How many times did we think he died? How many times did we let him die? They're children. Every time we send them out, we might as well have killed them ourselves.
Misato screamed wordlessly and pressed her palms over her face.
It doesn't matter how close it gets. I can't take more of this anymore.
Nerve, this is Cerberus base, do you read? This is Yang. What happened? Is there anything we can do to help? Misato felt drained. She supposed she was still in shock. There was still the off chance the pilot survived. Nagisa and Akari's struggle sounded too bitter to end on such a simple note. It still didn't matter. Politically dangerous or not, she was going to use her power as Nerve's operations director to bludgeon the entire goddamn world into finding some way of fighting that didn't involve blatant human sacrifice. War was war, but this was just torture. Children with warped minds threatened the world. It wasn't right. Her hands were shaking. She was a soldier. She knew it was just a matter of time before she was hugging a cold corpse. She felt cold.
What do you mean, no signal?
Kirishima's voice interrupted.
That can't be true. You must be doing something wrong. There's no signal, that's just it. Not the pilot status readouts, not the transponders. It's basically just not there. The Evangelion is gone.
Or dead, as far as a cyborg organism could be considered deceased. Satsuki felt an odd laugh bubble up behind her throat. Surprisingly, it could be argued the Avas were something of a zombie. If even the existence of the Evangelion can't be confirmed, then... No, I will not offer my condolences yet. Are you sensing anything, Master Pagnor? A gravelly voice came out from the open channel to Cerberus's base's bunker. No, there is something massive, very, very old, and very, very powerful, not quite asleep below our feet. I'm sorry to say it's beyond anyone's abilities, not even the best of us. He'd felt his old teacher die from all the way across the world. Not even Yang being annoying could lift him from his funk. Suddenly, Makoto screamed excitedly with, "There's an AT field blip!" It was weak. A thick fog still obscured the view all around the lake. Cameras could pick out a dark, Ava-shaped shadow limping out of the deep pit. The field flickered and died, and Trident's Dominator stumbled out of the mist. The formerly sleek white carapace was cracked and blackened. The hybrid machine stumbled and fell face down into the muck. Slowly and awkwardly, it tried to crawl away.
I could have died,
Kaworu gasped, and though he admitted it to himself out loud, the words still held that odd, unreal quality in his ears.
I could have died!
He felt like laughing. He'd actually died several times in his course of service to SEAL. The physical pain of being torn apart, humiliated and toyed with before being destroyed, all those before just didn't compare. Now, with that brief touch of his own mortality, never before had he felt so alive. Shots from the remaining overhead adaptive armament buildings peppered away at his back. He didn't even bother raising an AT field. He looked ahead to the wound on the nerve pyramid's face and pointed a finger at it. A hole appeared on the tip of that finger, and from it a blinding white lance went into the dark gap. He moved that finger around, and the thin, hot positron beam carved out the insides. "Enough of this!" he shouted into the open comms. "I've had enough. Annoy me further, and your precious command crew will die." One of his ring pods detached and went over to the widened wound in the building's side. It expanded into an umbrella-like shape to latch onto and over the cavity. "Katsuragi, if you're still alive to hear this, that is an angel that will self-destruct with force sufficient to completely erase that nerve compound right off the face of the geofront. You will accomplish absolutely nothing with continued insolence." Kaworu licked at his lips and tasted blood. He felt at his ribs. He could feel some of them starting to knit back together. There was a bestial howl. 2 round red eyes shone from the mist. Unit 1 emerged, walking on all 4 limbs like an animal. It snarled at the fallen Trident Warborn free and pounced. Like the Dominatus, its appearance was worn. The intense shock had burnt out all its reporting apparatus. No wonder they'd thought it dead. All electronics were fried, and it moved only now by sheer instinct and stubbornness. The flecked coil right hybrid rolled over to lie onto its back and kicked out, catching the Ava with both feet right in the jaw. As it flopped off balance, wearily the Dominatus got back up to its feet. "Damn you, Ikari! Fall down!" Its left arm turned into a tube that glowed blue with energy. A blast from it staggered the Ava, but it pushed off the ground and returned to a crouch. "What does it take? Fool! Fool!" He began to hammer away at the Berserker Evangelion, giving it no time to react. It grabbed at one of the Dominatus' arms and began chewing. Like with Unit 3 against the Angel Puppet Unit 4, the only permanent method of keeping the enemy from healing was to let an Ava's own digestive juices transform it to raw nutrient. I should probably say something dirty here about, whoop, you trying to, yikes, eat me, Ikari, Kaworu added, while trying to avoid even more frantic grabs at his trident's body parts. But the thought is far too freakishly incestuous even for me. He held up his right hand and opened its palm out to the sky. With a squelch and a spray of living metal, another lance formed. From a tight spiral cone it unravelled into the familiar 3 prongs. With a yell, he slammed it down to pin the Evangelion into the ground through its spine. Ravenous and blood-man beyond pain, Unit 1 tried to lunge anyway. As it gnashed and clawed at the air, Kaworu clapped his hands together and laid them on the ground. A green circle formed around both giants, and glowing chains again bound Unit 1. There would be no escape this time. A song old as time itself echoed in his brain. He formed another lance, one with a bident lit tip. The chains around Unit 1's neck pulled taut, while those around its legs forced it to its knees. Kaworu took a deep breath and stabbed it right in the exposed core. The red glow from Unit 1's eyes faded. It collapsed on its back. Veins bulged out from the contact point. Acid steam hissed at the edges. The Dominatus' arms puffed out as if drinking with suction. Kaworu inside the cockpit opened his right palm in front of his face, and from a small slit in the console, something was forcefully ejected into his grasp. Kaworu opened his hand and smiled at the red marble. "Hello, Miss Ikari. You've caused me no end of trouble." He looked around and noted his cockpit chair had an ashtray. He flicked it into the container and closed the latch. "Well, that fulfills my obligation to the other Ikari," he whispered. Slowly he walked over to the Evangelion. He grabbed it by the back of the head and forced it up. He peeled away the faceplate, exposing the Ava's true gruesome face. He pressed the Dominatus' forehead to its own, uncaring now that he was in stabbing or headbutting range. "Ikari, I will give this one last alternative. You try too hard, but ultimately you are mortal, and you will fail. I'm the one that's immortal. How about this compromise? I will give you the God Emperor that you want. I will even let you kill me. I will give you one final victory. This form will die. I will have your face. I will have your memories. You will have my vision. You will have my ruthlessness. You've reached your limit, Akari-kun. The greater good, I can limit it to just mankind. They will have their glorious war against all other forms of life in the universe, angel or otherwise. They will be masters of all they survey. So how about it? I will give this final respect. Open your mind to me, and I will turn that frail and impure shell of yours into a vessel truly worthy of what you wish you could be. I can't force my way into your memories. There's so much that can be damaged. But if you let me in, we will instead mix. Become one with me, Akari, and we will become the ever-watchful, ever-faithful guide and protector that mankind's soul deserves. I can't lie. Not here. Look into my mind. All that you are will continue. Kaoru Nagisa will die. It will be your victory. This is the only true victory you can have. Soryu, Ayanami and the others, they will not lose you. The memories will be perfect. What will be cannot really be said to be your consciousness, nor mine, but a synergy more potent than either alone. What I can't understand I will finally learn. The power that will protect your people will finally arrive. The alternative is, of course, to spend the rest of your days flailing around in futile gestures. I won't kill you, of course, but it will be even more painful and humiliating. I will tarnish your legend to further mine. I will let history remember you as nothing more than a failure, an object lesson as to what it means to be stupid enough to continually deny the worth of the greater good. So, how about it? Kaoru was confident that the depth and intensity of his own experiences would overwhelm Shinji Akari's. That he wouldn't need to ruse Soryu all over again was a nice bonus. He felt the boy's mind open and he felt something bite at the back of his head. He turned around to see Magnos Tancred limping on the approach. Kirishima. Of course, I forgot. He sneered and one of his wing pods blasted a beam that knocked it back on its ass. He turned back to the task, opening his mind and... How about this alternative, monkey? Why don't you give me your face? What? He felt the front of his mind burn. Something old and vicious clawed at the edges of his consciousness, but receded. A familiar warmth covered his eyes.
Begone! In the name of the greater good, your avarice will not win this day.
You dare stand in my way, infant? Do you even realize the destruction that you caught?
I am known as Farsight, and I have more than enough reasons to despise the Elder. I dare, old one. I dare to say your time is past. I stand here, and you will go no further!
Kaoru staggered and let the Ava drop. He clutched at the side of his head. No! So close, always stopped at the threshold. The voice faded. Kaoru blinked. What was that just now?
A trap. As they say, a kamikaze. Worry not, my pupil. Only you can control your own destiny, and have no need to steal anyone else's.
Unit 1 roared and reached out with both hands. Its fingers dug into the Dominatus's back. Its mouth was open, and it incoherently growled out a sound similar to "Rah!" Kaoru punched it in the face, and it fell down. The green glow in its core faded. The fuck? A prog knife ejected from Unit 1's shoulder pylons. The Ava snatched it from midair and slashed. Kaoru blocked it with his left forearm. Sparks flew where the blade met a hastily formed bracer. Then, before Kaoru can consider another motion, the Ava dropped limp and lifeless again. Unit 1's eyes glowed red. It opened its mouth and let loose a torrent of pinkish fire. Kaoru recoiled and began stomping on the cracked core. The Ava ceased moving again. With a sudden jerk, Unit 1 sat back up. Kaoru was ready and jammed the blade right into its brain pan. The Ava's eyes glowed white, and it extended the middle fingers of both its hands. It then dropped, losing power. Kaoru flicked between all forms of sight. The Ava was completely drained. He waited a minute. 2 minutes. 5. And then dropped his stance from the ready posture. He wiped sweat off his brow and tried to get his breathing back under control. He looked around. Unit 1 was at his feet. Unit 0 remained a headless ruin. Nerve was at his mercy. The violent seesaw of emotions was over. It had gone according to plan. In the end, brute resilience won over desperate strength. Careful preparation over frantic improvisation. He'd done it all with his own power, his own will made manifest.
This is it, isn't it?
He gasped, hardly to believe it.
I've done it. I've won.
His lips twitched.
There's no one else. All objectives have been accomplished. There's no turning back from this.
The pounding of his heart from the ball-crushing fear of earlier only intensified.
After everything, all the shit and the weirdness and the unexpected thrown my way, I did it! I beat him. I beat them all! At last!
He shouted with clear, triumphant laughter. A winner is me!
It was all worth it! I've won!
Light from above ground bounced off the frozen pillars, and the geofront's walls were filled by dancing butterflies of light. The Trident's dominatus raised both hands and clenched its fists. Its faceplate cracked open, and a glorious roar issued forth. Was the feral feminine bellow in his radio. Die! Or he'll kill ya!
Oh, right, Kirishima.
I keep forgetting, Kaworu chuckled. It was too late. What could she do? Move! Kill! Mana Kirishima snarled and pointed with her artificial arm. What are you numbnuts waiting for? Fire our weapons! Show me your moves! Kirishima-san, we fired off the energy in the positron cannon capacitors, said Tancred's gunner, Jiro Takeda. If we fire again, we'll be taking them for the cells that supply power for movement. We've never had to move with a time limit before, Sergeant Nagato, the driver, added. A single positron shot takes off about 30 minutes of motive power. So how much do we have? The left auxiliary screen, which was supposed to show that information, was dark and cracked. 11 minutes in reserve, he supplied with some panic. Unlike an Ava, he knew the land dreadnought couldn't count on some deus ex machina to keep it going when those batteries were dry. Mana pulled her cap over her face. She gnashed her teeth and with a discreet flick of the thumb wiped away wetness from her cheek. Forward! Ramming speed! Oi, Commissar Captain! The pointed drill in Magnos Tancred's right arm was a wreck. The 3 core drills in its left arm buzzed close by the Dominatus's crotch. Kaworu could just fly up to where the Trident land dreadnought couldn't reach, or ignore it entirely, but he was still too far into his post-battle high. He was happy as he had never felt before. He was inclined to be merciful. Teasing, even. He leaned away from another blow and just shoved. Magnos Tancred waddled and waved its stubby arms to keep its balance.
Give it up, Kirishima. Kaworu's voice was gentle. I have endured the lightning. I have weathered the storm. Look at him. For all the crazy shit he pulled, he couldn't do it. What do you hope to accomplish?
Great justice!
Yeah, I'm not going to get any intelligent conversation from you. Begone.
With a wave of his hand and a pulse of the AT field, the land dreadnought in all its thousands of tons was tossed back to a tumble. Hydraulic rams on its back stabbed into the ground, trying to force the bulky machine to its feet. The left lift jack snapped under the strain, and the dreadnought fell. Mana controlled only the arms. Clumsily, Magnos Tancred tried to roll over face down to push itself back up. Kaworu and turned away.
Don't you dare show your back to me, you bastard!
Mana hissed. With one final shove, the dreadnought was vertical again. It spread its stance and stomped its feet like a sumo wrestler. The Dominatus didn't even bother looking back. Its stride was measured and confident towards the nerve pyramid and the primary shaft towards terminal dogma. Its machine cells had nothing to fear from any punching and drilling the land dreadnought could do, nor any of its guns.
Tancred, rocket punch!
We lost our jump jets, Kirishima-san!
I said rocket punch, damn it!
Rocket punch, oi! Charges engaged, ready to fire on your mark! Mana grinned fiercely and raised her hands. Her arms were clad in an armature ending in thick, wire-lined and fingerless gloves. Magnus Tancred followed her motion, and when she clenched her hands into fists, explosive bolts fired off behind the land dreadnought's braces and separated it from the internal skeletal frame. Propellant burned and sent the forelimbs streaking through the air on white trails. "You cannot possibly be serious," Kaworu said numbly. He moved aside, slightly away from the wavering flight path. "Why do you people keep on indulging Ada?" The rocket-propelled punching drills weren't exactly aerodynamic. They bobbed about in mid-air, turned a bit, and shot past the Dominatus on either side. A thick guide wire bumped against its torso. The two rocket punches were pulled into an arc that forced them to loop back and wrap tight around the lightning-scorched Angel hybrid. Mana Kirishima slapped her palms together. "Tancred! Shock! Collider!" A high-voltage, high-amp jolt drawn straight from the land dreadnought's power cell shot through the wire. The Trident's Dominatus twitched a little bit. Kaworu sighed. Unit 1 shock collider takes the energy output of a matter-antimatter reaction and converts that into raw current. It goes through an AT field because the current itself is a continuous interaction on the macroscopic scale. It was like being hit by raw hatred. I'm insulated enough to try and resist that. Just throwing electricity at me does nothing. With a flex of its arms, serrated blades appeared along the length of its torso to cut the wire. The Dominatus then grabbed the ends of the wire and pulled. Magnus Tancred, forced to step along to keep its balance, blew away the locks keeping its forelimbs connected to the elbow. Now effectively armless, the man-made machine evoked an expression of puppy-like confusion. This is a waste of my time. Kaworu sighed again. It wasn't worth even the bother of killing. That would imply that at any point in time it would have been a threat. If any of the Avas were still active, perhaps, as the Trident Land Dreadnought was specifically designed for distraction and delaying action, the fruit of man's mundane industry simply lacked the power to pursue any measurable form of vengeance. "We're not done!" Mana screeched. "We're not done!" There was no point anymore in pretending she was just so hardcore she was beyond tears. She was just then again a girl, watching those she loved be taken away by powers incomprehensible. Her parents, her friends, and now... They were always turning their back on her. Even back to school, be a good little soldier, obey orders. It wasn't for her to question or decide for herself. Even with the best of intentions, she was always left behind, to be protected or to preserve what little remained of her innocence. What for? What for? So we can stand here all alone? Do they really think I'd be happy with this? That I won't want to avenge them? She looked back up and unhooked her seatbelt. You think you can ignore me? You're looking down on me, as if my fans can't reach you. She looked towards her own crew, who nodded. They would at least stay to the end. How much power do we have left? 2 minutes, 40 seconds. Command override. She stepped forward to slide her boots into leg clamps. Let's get it on. The Trident Dominatus was already halfway to the pyramid. Mana Kirishima took a deep breath. Tancred! Howitzer! The stumps of the Land Dreadnought's arms contained a cut-down artillery cannon with 6 rounds in a revolver assembly. Compared to the sheer size of the war machine, fitting in a custom 150mm cannon was almost no problem at all. Cheerfully donated by the UN Army were freshly made Davy Crockett-style nuclear artillery shells. Fired off in quick succession, most just missed, but 3 did go right into the Trident's Dominatus' chest, exploding to rip it right in two. The splayed halves of its torso flopped about as if staggered off balance. Magnus Tancred bull rushed to knock it to the ground, flamers burning to sear the wound. Liquid metal flowed like quicksilver. Acid dispensers popped off. The Land Dreadnought's tank cannon and the 40mm AA gun poked tiny holes in the mess. Without arms, the only thing it could do was stomp its feet. And stomp it did. Whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. As the minutes ticked down into seconds. Whoomp! Mana opened her mouth but no sound came out. She wiped her eyes. She looked up and saw the main screen was dark. Only the emergency life support systems remained online. A new head grew out from the puddle beneath the Land Dreadnought's feet. The torso slid back into shape. You done? Kaworu asked in a cold voice. Good. One of its arms smoothly turned into a long piledriver tip. The hard clang bounced over and over inside Magnus Tancred's insides. Mana looked up to see light straining in an open gash in the land dreadnought's famed thrice-thick glacis plate. The tridents punched through again, and Vince Nagato screamed as his control panel folded over and into his thighs, his knees bent to the side by 90 degrees, becoming bloody pulp sandwiched between layers of metal. He'd been so proud when he was chosen to become part of the crew of Magnos Tancred. It wasn't up to the level of the Ava pilots, but it was nonetheless a position of fame and glory. After just one combat mission, he was a sergeant. A few more, and as he was told the JSSDF and in his wasn't abandoning the whole land dreadnought concept, the standard rank would be Master Sergeant. There was nothing quite like that to buff up a record. Like Kirishima herself, he was a state orphan, and had a lifetime bent to prove himself. Through the pain, his only thought was, why aren't they ejecting already? Jiro Takeda was not as studious and serious as Keita Asari. He was just a minor talent, chosen off the rank and file rather than a product of the prestigious and secretive school. He was smart enough to figure out that he and Sergeant Nagato were chosen more for their photogenic qualities than any unproven skills. Still, it did mean there was less to unlearn. The command core of the Trident Land Dreadnought was a single large escape pod, with enough air and supplies to serve them for up to a week without pickup from pretty much anywhere. Should that fail, however, under their seats were fast-release access chutes that would pull and throw them out of an internal tunnel and out the back. Twisted metal, and the fact that Magnos Tancred was again lying flat on its back like a turtle, meant no escape methods other than crawling out the gap the enemy was making would work. He looked back and up to the commander's seat. Mana Kirishima stood rock steady, her black coat open to show the wide red sash. He hated her right then, as she decided to throw away their lives in a gesture of defiance. He hated himself more, as he had no hesitation in following her orders. What sort of person was he, to leave an excitable little sister figure to die, sad, silent and alone? Jiro Takeda did not want to die. He cast his gaze around wildly, but there really was no way out. Kirishima was their superior officer. She was the important one. She had to live. No matter that they were run ragged in combat drills, even at her shoutiest and shootiest, it was all just so goddamn cute. Damn the politicians for forcing the UN to make with the good publicity, and damn it, did she really have to be so dedicated to her duty? It was the ancient compact of the fighting man, from the very first poor foot-slogger that had to fight in blind obedience to the whims of an absent general. If you must die, don't die alone. Vince! Jiro shouted hoarsely, trying to communicate his entire plan with a glance and the tone of his voice. Through blood-splattered lips, Vincent grinned and hissed. Tancred endures. He forced past the pain and grabbed the controls. He had to get Magnos Tancred at least with its back off the ground. Jiro, with his legs and arms, had a more difficult task. He had to tackle Kirishima, tie her down to her seat and trigger the eject. She might shoot him rather than take any surrender. There was one loud, final, metal-wrenching noise, and the Trident's Dominatus' hand plunged into the command core. Its fingers went around Mana Kirishima. No! Shouted Jiro, grabbing at the hand, and of course failing as it pulled her out of the machine. Kaworu looked down and smirked. A strong wind had blown back her black hat, but Mana still looked defiant. That was a nasty trick, Kaworu said flippantly. If you'd done that while there was still an Ava to grapple, or forced me to a standstill, likely this whole thing would have ended differently. How lucky for me that you Trident machines' shock absorption systems are much less efficient than an LCL buffer. Unlike plug suits with their stimulant and emergency medical service packs, if knocked unconscious, as she was for a time, the crew would have to wake up on their own. Mana bit her lip. Those few moments of her physical weakness might have cost him so much. Still not strong enough. Any last words, Kirishima? She wriggled in place and managed to get her right hand loose. She pointed her bolt pistol again up at the enemy. Shut up and die! Kaworu laughed. This was beyond bravado. This was just stupidity. Leaving aside the utter inability of any human portable bolt weapon to cause harm to his Dominatus, the effective range of a .50 cal bolt pistol was about 50 metres. The more compact one she used was about 35 metres. That was barely arm's length for an Ava. Snarling, Mana fired off a cliff, and once emptied began bashing with futile rage at the finger holding her with the butt of her pistol. Kaworu continued to laugh. Mana screamed at hearing that. She pointed up with her left hand. The palm split open and a short gun barrel poked out. The tiny hold-out needle gun flashed. Kaworu scratched an itch on his cheek, and his fingers returned with blood. For some unknown reason, a very thin scratch had appeared on his face. How the hell? He frowned and tightened his grip. Mana suppressed a grunt of pain. This has ceased to be amusing, he said with a snarl. Ikari! Katsuragi! If you can still hear this, any of you, pointless struggle just forces me to oblige a continuation of violence. There is nothing more you can do. Show some sense for a change. If you people are really so eager to become martyrs, then I will grant you your wish. He closed his fist. In fact, Shinji could hear. The entry plug was dark. He pulled again and again and again at the triggers. Move. Move, move, please move! Help her, save her, move! Someone, anyone, move and stop this. I'll give anything, whatever you want, please! Unit 1 remained silent. There would be no more Deus Ex Machina action from it for the day. That's a very strong AT field, Shigeru shouted, standing up in surprise. This reading, pattern blue, it's off the charts! A trickling note descended from the open hole in the geofront, and over the now much more narrow underground lake. It sharply changed direction, moving at supersonic speed and leaving a bright red trail. Faster than an eye blink, the thin red line went up Trident Dominatus' ankles, past its hip, up its back and down its arm. There was a faint clicking noise. Kaworu blinked and watched the Dominatus' right hand disappear right off its wrist. As the clenched fist tumbled in midair, it began to fall apart in a crisscrossing grid of red, heat-seared cuts. Slowly, Mana opened her eyes. She was floating. She felt warm and safe. She was being carried bridal style and backlit against the sunlight streaming in from the surface of her rescuer's long straight hair, which drifted out like the wings of a dark bird. Glowing red eyes stared down at her with unexpected concern. The face was obviously female, and yet also familiar. Mana reached out with her slightly mangled biomechanical left arm to weakly touch a cheek. That expression was something she had seen so many times in so many, perhaps late-night dreams would be sufficient description. Not naked adoration, that was too unrealistic, but ever-present regret. The tight grasp on her shoulders and knees meant being sorry for being so late, and being sorry for inevitably having to let go. They all had their own problems, their own yearnings, but the world keeps on turning, and more of them could make their moments last forever. Are you an angel? Mana asked. Not Shito, messenger, or enemy and judge of man, but meant in the classical hallmark sense. Raka put her down on the grass and smiled sadly. I'm trying. She looked up at the gargantuan form of the Trident's Dominatus and bared her teeth. I'm not him, Kirishima-san. Don't worry. He will build you a happy world. I am the destroyer that removes the cancer. The main screen showed a close-in zoom of the stranger. Unfortunately, Shinji was effeminate enough that it didn't take a great leap of imagination to see the resemblance to him being born as a girl. Raka put on large round sunglasses that hide the eerie demonic red glow in her eyes. She put her palms up in the air and spread her arms out to the sides. A bow of crackling blue lightning lit the air above her head like a halo. Kaworu had likewise filled the view in his central screen. No, he raved, while pointing at the small figure below. He looked towards the fallen form of Unit 1. No! Damn you, Akari. You couldn't possibly have been enough of a paranoid lunatic to upload your memories into the ghost dubbing machine, kill Ayanami, and then wake up a clone with your memories and your abilities, and then wake up another clone just with Ayanami's soul in it. He wildly banged upon his control rods with his fist. No! I would have seen it! You talk too much. There was a worrying tendency that growing bigger just didn't seem to serve anyone. The greater the size difference between David and Goliath, the more likely the smaller, faster combatant would win. In just under an hour, there was a seal beast, then Unit 1's ice giant, then now. Raka ran under the shadow of a colossus and up and down its limbs, jumping lightly, and proving that if you were clinging to the Dominatus when it teleports, it would bring you along, apparently. Kaworu took pride in his self-control and making others comply without ever giving them a hint of his thoughts. He was just on the verge of going berserker as he swatted and sliced something that crawled all over his body. He was just as likely to slice off his own limbs that way. Only Shinji Akagi could infuriate him that much, and a weakness he didn't want exposed was that when he was angry, Kaworu indeed got chatty. He felt a tingle and realised she was trying to saw the Dominatus's head off with her bare hands. Kaworu roared and pulsed his field. A small flickering red sphere floated off and bounced to the ground. Kaworu breathed heavily. His pulse pounded through his veins. So this is what Akagi feels. This is the state of desperation where he pulls off his miracles. Its AT field was at least as strong as his own. He knew just how much personal power he possessed. It'd be like fighting himself, and with all the unpredictable qualities of Akari's soul. Impossible. But it all makes sense now. No wonder you gathered support ridiculously quickly. How did you ferret so much out of Seal's resources? I pointed the way to some of those, for I have my own reasons of working against my makers. But the rest of it... You conniving son of a bitch! You set yourself as the decoy. While we were looking at your hand-waving and grandstanding, someone must have been working all this time in the shadows. I should have seen this. The only reason it would have escaped my notice would be if it happened before I attained the ability to pursue the lines of probability. Oh, bravo. All the lessons I was teaching you, so you've already learned the ruthless practical applications. He was making a fool of me all this time, laughing inside. You were my equal. You're actually dangerous after all. Looks like it can't be helped after all. This entire city must die. He ran his hands through his white hair. This puts all my plans into jeopardy. Congratulations. Burn in hell. Raka landed in a half-crouch. She looked over to Unit 1, whose eyes glowed brighter for a moment. Sure, let's go with that, two voices said at the same time. Nagisa, don't look behind you. He was trapped and he knew it. What other ludicrous miracle turnaround would Akagi pull this time? Of course, it could be just a ruse. On the other hand, he knew that they knew that he knew that they knew that he would think that. They could be brutally honest, knowing that he would have to think it over, whether he could trust his own worst enemy to give advice that would serve his own interests. On the face of it, of course they should be lying, but it was too damn obvious. As they were the enemies that he could see, it would be most illogical to take his eyes away from them. Therefore, it was the best time to get attacked from the back. Look or don't look, he screamed. Damn him! Damn them! He turned around quickly. There was no one there. Of course, he sighed. Kaworu turned the Dominatus's head back, only to get an extremely close-in view of a slim fist. Kaworu winced from the feedback as the protective eye cap was broken through. The resistance against enemy AT fields only applied from the outside. A focused blast to the AT field hollowed out and blasted away what served as the Dominatus's brains and central control organs out the back of his head. Raka was wearing a backpack when she arrived. She tossed that into the hole and with a graceful backflip, pushed away. A directed N2 mine ripped the Dominatus open from neck to crotch. Kaworu was knocked around his cockpit, but otherwise unharmed. He no longer even bothered to touch the controls. With his AT field alone, he commanded the very machine shells to reshape. No, I can't. It won't end like this! He shouted. There was a hollow bang, and then a ripping noise. Kaworu put his hands up to block the glare of sunlight. Sunlight? Hello, meatling, said Raka, pulling open the core-like shell around the Dominatus's cockpit. I won't let it! Kaworu shouted, putting his weight on his elbows and kicking her in the face. The tridents dropped and rolled and its living metal twisted back into a roughly humanoid shape. No, he grimaced, while clutching at his chest over his heart. It hurt. Why? I tried so hard. Why is it that nothing I do ever really works? I tried to limit the destruction to the necessary, to account for every possibility. God damn it all, I even deliberately went out to become a precognitive just to make sure. Why? It's not fair. I know the universe is supposed to be indifferent, but this is so cruel. Why? I try so hard! I never gave up! He was almost in tears. His blood felt like boiling. His AT field sung with his rage.
Why?
His voice dropped to a whisper.
Why doesn't anyone like me?
Even Raka looked askance at that question. His plan to get Sawyer out of Tokyo free was to cut a swath through Europe. For the rest of it, Kara Nagisa applied the golden rule to an exacting, if utterly psychotic degree.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I suppose you think compared to how you've suffered, that much spread over so many is still a little sacrifice. The burden of one man is light upon 1,000. What's a little pain now for 1,000 years of peace and prosperity beyond their ability to imagine? The excuse of tyrants and self-indulgent dictators everywhere.
Another voice overlaid hers.
You messed with the value of free will, Nagisa. This we do not forget. We do not forgive.
It was an ugly feeling. He had the power to crush thousands, millions with a mere wave of his hand. He knew the feeling of those insignificant creatures when facing someone of vast and incomprehensible power. And he had sworn never to feel that again. Not since the day when he was introduced to a creature appropriately known as Farsight. As much as he rejoiced in battle that confirmed his existence, when titans clashed they reshaped the world. There was no joy in being denied the chance to see the world he had so painfully chipped out of unspoken fate. Kaworu stamped his hands and the Dominatus pushed back to its feet.
No, I will not be beaten. Not like this. Not right now.
He looked around wildly, then down. Almost reverently, the Trident Warborn bent down to stroke the ground.
I see. I've done what was asked of me. It's almost complete.
He looked up sharply and sneered.
Soon I will be invincible!
Raka palmed her face.
For a supposed mastermind, you just keep on piling on these self-inflicted injuries.
The Trident Dominatus wing pods detached and each of them picked a target. The one still on the pyramid's face shone blinking red light into the command centre from its glowing insectoid eyes. It was joined by another clamming down on the opposite side. Another wrapped itself around Unit 1's head, while one more slammed into the hatch nearest the headless Unit 0. It disgorged hundreds of glowing blue spheres that burst into purple flesh, quill-headed, snarling vorehounds. More went up and out the hole in the geofront to Harry and his and all the rest. They were also an annoyance that can no longer be tolerated.
There's something coming out!
Reported one of the lieutenants in Cerberus base. Mere seconds later, there was a flash on the main screen, and the entire complex shook. The bunker was deep underground, protected by layers of steel and reinforced concrete. It took several blasts before the two angel pods, chirping at each other with oddly cute grasshopper heads, decided to plunge straight down. Rock and dust exploded from above, and everyone ducked for cover. A long proboscis slid through the cracks and towards a chair off behind the commander's seat. Caught entirely by surprise, Yang screamed like a little girl. He fell backwards off his chair and rolled. The former admiral rolled for a few feet and in a smooth motion unfolded into a ready, if deceptively woozy stance. Born the son of a Hong Kong stuntman, yes, Yang Wen Li did know some kung fu. To be precise, drunken boxing. He looked embarrassed. Lama Pagnor unslung his spear and sighed. It fit too damn well. The angel proboscis thickened and spat out glowing white orbs.
Ah, finally, something we can handle.
These are angels on their own, Ikari! Kaworu shouted, gesturing emphatically. They will now self-destruct and destroy anything around them with a force more than equivalent to any M2 mine in your arsenal. Can you save all of them, Ikari? He laughed maniacally.
I know you will try. You have 40 seconds!
With that said, the Dominatus's left arm turned into a blast again, and he shot off a nearby Ava access pad. He dropped down the open shaft and into the main Ava cages. Backlight only filled the corridors. Ava-scale doors and tunnels were far too large to effect. There was nothing underground and inside Central Dogma that could even slow him down. Pulling up memories of the Geofront's layout from latest activities, he tore through towards Terminal Dogma. 20 seconds in, he heard the distant rumble of several large explosions. He smirked. Layers upon layers of armour plating caved in like wet paper. The Trident's Dominatus had the qualities of the soul-named Lance of Longinus, a first ancestral race artifact with the power to subdue even the godlike being as the great mother beings such as Adam and Lilith. And they were sent out as mere terraforming tools to encourage life in the universe that the ancestors so loved, and how much more mind-bogglingly powerful the makers would have been. The knowledge that such glories lay out there, while he was trapped in a frail mortal shell, it brought Kaoru Nagisa pain and little mercy for the selfish, small-minded foibles of mankind. His entire existence was desolation. In another time and place, perhaps, he could have decided to end it, should he encounter a soul so beautiful in its despair that he wouldn't be able to destroy it, for such was the only thing to do with perfection. He fell for kilometres and splashed down upon the lake of LCL. Above was a domed cavern adorned by swirling galaxies spinning slowly in the dark expanse of space. Ordinarily, he would have found it curious. Was it a map? Was it projected up there somehow, or were the walls themselves lined with chromatophores like an octopus's skin? Lilith's vessel was supposed to be identical to Adam's own. That one was lost in the fires of his aborted rebirth in Second Impact. It would only be sensible to know all about it before destroying it. The frightening thing about the number 1 is that it could become number 2. No matter what it was, in the vastness of the universe, and given enough time, it could and would happen again. Inevitably he would find another like it, and what with all the craziness this one brought about, no way in hell would he allow himself to experience that a second time. Ikari must die, he decided with some regret. It was too dangerous to let the conflict continue to escalate. It had crossed the line from amusing tests of his own self-worth to gratuitous front stabbery. Silver lining to this, now that I know Ikari has his own set of clones, if ever I feel too bored, I might make and set loose a copy now and then. My single remaining link to the past. He laughed bitterly. Perhaps these thoughts should be left for when I've actually won. Mentally he reviewed his plans. All of them had been correct. All of them had accomplished the goals he had set. And yet all of them were just a delaying action against the torrent. The Tempest. What had he done wrong? He pulled out several coiled tridents from the body of the Dominatus. I have no weaknesses. Not even arrogance. That's what contingency plans are for. He still lived. He hadn't won, but not yet, not ever, had he lost anything of any real importance. There, on a small island in a lake of her blood, was the crucified and impaled form of Lilith's physical presence. The puffy and flesh white creature looked dead, were it not for continuous streams of LCL running down the cross, and the little twitching bundles of shapely human legs growing in place of the amputated limbs used to grow and repair Unit 1. The part of him that was Adam sneered. How the mighty had fallen. More important was the so-called Lance of Longinus still impaling it over the heart. He went over and grabbed it. His Dominatus was an angel born of Adam. It was, actually, all that remained of Zuriel. Any contact whatsoever with Lilith's flesh would cause an immediate one-array impact to prevent. Very carefully he pulled the device free. Bloated legs suddenly grew out, driving into the LCL with a splash. It was disappointing. He had expected some form of magical connection, a feeling of rightness, for it was a tool equal to Adam in every way. It was this very same tool that sealed off Adam when it lost to Lilith so long ago. No, tool was too crude a word, even more ignorant than how others just thought of it as a weapon. It was knowledge in solid form. Without it, no life-giving star would ever break out of its crystal sphere. The key, the very core program created by the first ancestral race. As self-replicating terraforming agents, Adam didn't merely prepare a world with the first organic compounds, but had shaped a star into being, moulded an entire solar system, and then by accident or deliberate manipulation, had it stolen from her when she had already spent most of her power. The memories flowed in the back of his mind. Mine again. He looked around. Ikari, where are you? Here, a voice crackled in his comms. Kaworu turned to see Gendo Ikari standing with his hands in his pockets at the head of a rusty balcony. The man held a large military radio to his head. Do you have what I require? Kaworu pulled out the red marble. I do. Give it to me. It occurs to me that you have more to lose than I, Rokabungi. Kaworu answered while holding up the miniature core at eye level. You say you know how to unlock the mysteries of this lance. I can have eons to unravel it myself. You cannot even hope to control your son. Not now, not after how much I've gone and enraged him. So bargaining with you for safety is pointless. I have exit plans of my own. He closed his hand over the stone. Frankly, this object is of little value to me, and there is more satisfaction in knowing it was denied to you. Gendo grit his teeth. You pick a poor time to renegotiate, Nagisa. Perhaps, but you have far more to lose than I have to gain. I know Adam was transported here. I can still sense her vaguely. Where is Adam? Is that your final answer? I have decided yes. Don't even try to waste my time, Akari. Gendo pushed his glasses up with his left hand. He then held that hand to show a large veiny eye filling his palm. Adam is disappointed. Stand down, Nagisa. Kaworu laughed loudly. Seriously? You thought you could control me with that? The eye on Gendo Akari's palm blinked. I seek to destroy Adam. She had no hold over me. Gendo continued to hold up his hand, as if trying to ward away even a spear that could pierce the strongest shield. The Trident's Dominatus loomed over the man. You have just made it more convenient for me. Die, Akari! Kaworu lifted the lance and stabbed down. The ginormous Bident halted, stuck immovable in Gendo Akari's grip, with the tip just mere inches from his jugular. His eyeglasses glinted as if to say, So I heard you like to conserve momentum. Yeah, I should have kept referring to you as Rokabungi, Kaworu muttered in a dejected tone. Gendo smirked. It is fun to be so theatrical, isn't it? But it's too easy to get sucked into the role. He pushed and the lance moved, its coils flapped open like gills of a fish. Do I really need to say, your overconfidence is your weakness? Well, I'd love to say your faith in friends are yours, but you don't really have any of that, do you? Kaworu grimaced. I should have seen this happen. Why didn't I say it when we last met? The Dominatus helpfully dug through his memory to supply the image. Gendo in Switzerland. A tall white-bearded Javali always stood nearby. Gendo inside the jet. His gloves were purple, not white, laced with Psy pre-infused wraithbone. You only left Japan again when your son arrived, he added in a stunned whisper. You had assistance. Am I in a scenario? Humans have AT fields as well. You told me that, Nagisa, Gendo said with another smirk. If Adam and Lilith are identical, then why is it that we, Lilim, have instead such useless, even self-harming fields of absolute territory? Because you're inferior, Kaworu wanted to say. However, he knew it was not that simple, no matter how squishy each individual human. If angels could be said to have taken the fruit of the flower of life, then the Lilim had the fruit of the tree of knowledge. He hefted the true Lancia Longini. It was no mere accident Lilith's lance was missing. Why is it that humans are turned inwards? What keeps them separate? It is no mere coincidence that psychics and the lance all have the same property of piercing or negating an AT field. Kaworu snarled. No more random reversals. Remember, Akari, I still hold your wife in my hand. Gendo brought his hands together, in the shape more properly known as the Vulcan salute, to look up at the Dominatus between two diamonds formed in the gap between his finger. He winced. Cracking and squishing noises issued forth, and his torso heaved. From out his black shirt emerged a large eye, open from rib to abdomen. Nagisa, kneel, he said in a voice rippling with power. The hybrid screamed in rage as the Dominatus dropped to one knee. He pulled controls, but felt strength leave his arms. Your wish has been fulfilled, said Gendo, as the swirling galaxies all around blinked. Eyes with red pupils bulged out of the cosmos. Adam is dead. The chain of fate is broken. Now complete your obligation. Damn you! All of you! Now, come here! A red marble floated up and slid through the living metal flesh of the Dominatus as if it was liquid. It shot through the distance until it stooped right over the eye in Gendo's palm. It dropped slowly, entering the retina with a ripple of the gel-like substance. Gendo didn't even bother to look satisfied. The tridents all fired up the terminal dogma shaft. The Dominatus remained kneeling. Kaworu stared down at his hands, his expression dry of any emotion. A returning red beam blasted out of the shaft, blowing away LCL into a small tsunami that washed over the Dominatus. Gendo lowered his hand, and his 80 field umbrella flickered off.
Nagisa, you have your lance. Take it and go.
Kaworu looked up.
You can not seriously expect me to believe you're going to fight a delaying action for me. Of all people, you...
Of course not. I'm not an idiot. I have no intention of fighting,
Gendo answered with a dismissive wave.
This is an order! Go!
That dramatic echo is going to get tiresome really quickly, Kaworu muttered some more. Listlessly, he stood up and turned on a signal. Drifting in other space, what remained of the Earth's cradle was a hollow black sphere, about 1/4 of a kilometre across. Packed inside were hundreds of thousands of people, each contained in small transparent globes the size of a fist. The globs of organic material contained all that was necessary to rebuild a new body, complete with all memories just prior to dissolution. Sarah Campbell paced around the cramped command centre. There were only 6 conscious people in the craft. She supposed that shedding off the great bulk of the Earth's cradle just made it more efficient. They could linger for longer in this strange, warped space. With less mass to move, their transit range was also much greater. They were no longer trapped by the well of gravity, and the thought that consumed them was, why stay? The solar system no longer had anything to offer them. The deceptive defeat and diminishing of their powers would buy them enough time to get far enough away to where they could build up their strength on their own terms. Sarah looked around. Everyone wanted to leave. Some of them were in fear of reprisal or the lingering guilt. She flicked her night black hair. Not one of them dared to say move. Martin Arthur Bettelheim was dead. Nagisa had promised not to bring him back, if ever he failed in his test of strength. Even Leda was kept frozen, his memories and his ego held in stasis. As the last of the chosen, she had less mercy than everyone. She smiled viciously. She was the dependable one. A distinctive beeping caught everyone's attention.
He's signalling. Prepare to drop out of time-space warp.
She forced her will upon the hive mind, and all the myriad consciousnesses within it parted before her as schools of small fish gave way to the great shark.
Bring us to Tokyo free.
A dark shape shot down into terminal dogma at terminal velocity. It slammed into the LCL lake, and the ambient heat of its intense AT field boiled away the liquid before it. Principio Eternus roared. At the tip of its broken horn stood a teenage girl in dark clothes, her long hair billowing around her like wings of a black bird. She stood with her arms crossed and a grin on her face. Her eyes narrowed at seeing who else was there.
You!
She snarled, pointing with her finger. Unit 1 pointed with its finger.
This was not in the scenario.
It wasn't unexpected, however. He and the boy were only temporary allies, and of course they held the truth of their plans from each other.
Go!
Gendo opened his palm out towards Lilith, and a red beam lanced out from the eye in it. The strange nine-eyed mass cracked, and acrid smoke hissed through from the gaps. Unit 1 stumbled in its full-on charge and pressed its hands to its face. Raka screamed, performing the same motion. The invisible threads of tangible energy she used to control the Ava, like a puppet on strings, or Unit 4 by Laylo, snapped one by one. The Ava face slid through the lake. Kaworu clutched the lance of Longinus and sucked in a breath. The Dominator shuddered and vanished. Gendo looked at his handiwork and nodded with satisfaction. He melted into the shadows. Alarms rang over what remained of the command centres. High above the city, a black pearl emerged in a crack boom of displaced air. There was a flicker, and Trident's Dominatus reappeared several kilometres in the air.
Don't lower your entanglement field yet!
He shouted up at it. That region of altered space denied teleportation. Unit 1 appeared out of nowhere. A false lance in a two-handed grip hummed, and it swung an energy blade much longer and larger than it was tall at him. Kaworu blocked just barely with the lance. The true lance wasn't evil, so the sword couldn't cleave right through it. Unit 1 pulled back for another slash. He wasn't sure that would have worked. A worse scenario would have been, due to the nature of the lance to cancel out AT fields, the blade would have been cut and the shorter end slicing him open from neck to groin. "Unbolt!" he heard over the comlink. The blade was made of the same stuff that was in Akari's lightning. A zone of voltage. Just ludicrous. He could almost feel his brain dribbling out his ears. "Oh, lords, I've got to get out of here!" Lightning stretched across the clear sky. Then, like a breeze on a hot summer's day, he felt the lance respond to his need. All it took was a touch, and everything returned to the void from which they sprung. Unit 1 seized up in mid-air, and fell as several thousand tons of monstrous machinery in the vengeful grip of gravity. It struck hard, scraping off the side of Mount Akone, and continued to tumble down the slopes. Trees did nothing to slow it down. Its limbs were ripped out of its sockets, its neck twisted several times over the full weight of the Ava was driven into those few bones. Finally it reached a highway, and the cracking of concrete hid it from view. A scar visible over from the ocean fleet was all that was left. Trident's dominators vanished. It reappeared deep inside the shadow moon. Grips and lines plunged into its flesh to welcome its consciousness back into the hive mind and a restful slumber. Kaworu was sucked into the living metal and spat out in the middle of the control centre. He coughed and weakly tried to stand up. He failed. Sarah offered her shoulder for support.
"How are you, Nagisa?"
she asked, a faint tinge of concern in her voice. He was obviously not all right. Let's go. We're done here. Get... The control centre was a pearly white, in stark contrast to the black night of its shell. Even there, however, there were shadows. The lights flickered for a moment, and Gendo Akagi stepped out without any fanfare. He looked arrogant as ever, and stalked through the command centre as if it was nerve itself. "You will not leave," he said blandly. "There is one more act before this farce is complete." Sarah Campbell clenched her teeth. What Martin and her had. It was something akin to love, but also its utter opposite. But it was Nagisa who had given her purpose. To many in the cradle, he was the outcast that let them look beyond shadows in the cave. She wasn't human. How she longed to just leap and feel this impudent fool's blood slicking between her fingers. "A tactical withdrawal," Kaworu gasped weakly. Gendo nodded.
"Nagisa, we don't have to do this."
Sarah looked up and very slightly frowned.
"Go away, or I'll kill you."
Her fingernails were starting to lengthen. The lights dimmed again and the Earth sphere tilted to the side. The feeling of losing weight. They were dropping. The hive mind frantically tried to recover power and... Alone! Alone! Where are the others? Oh God, it's so cold! Why? The lights returned.
"I have no more patience for ignorant children,"
said Gendo. He gestured, and out from the chair flowed into being a table and an office chair. He flicked his hand up, and the ceiling retracted to allow a small raised dais, like the rise for a throne. Stairs appeared along the side. He walked up to it, and very deliberately placed his left palm on the table surface.
"You all belong to me now. Do you understand this?"
No, I won't. Not again. Never, ever. He roared and bowed his head. The realization filled him with horror. Seal's power was broken. Tokyo 3 was left defenseless, all its Evangelions out of commission. And he... Kaworu let go of Sarah's shoulder and slumped defeated to both knees.
"Yes,"
the hive mind was screaming.
"Yes, my master."
He was a slave again. The black sphere vanished back into space between reality. It left behind devastation and souls permanently scarred. Physical gods battled for supremacy, with every blow chipping away at history. Through it all, only Gendo Akagi could be said to have accomplished anything. He sat, put his elbows on the table, and smirked. And never once did he break a sweat.